Okay, so doing this on Thursday instead of Tuesday because I completely lost track of time in the day on Tuesday. um, and right now it's just me. Maybe, hopefully, other people will show up. Um, Sent that link trying to get this ball rolling finally, out of schedule. And okay, so the idea behind this current stream is like we talked about the previous week. I mentioned businesses being more benevolent than charities, and throughout the week, I was kicking these ideas around and things I wanted to talk about, and I kept coming back to A Christmas Carol. Uh, you know, classic Charles Dickens story. It's kind of this. It is a classic and it's a really good story, but there are huge flaws with the overall narrative of A Christmas Carol. Because Ebenezer Scrooge is painted as this big bad in the mind of Charles Dickens and in the mind of anybody who's read the story. And the more I know or learn about economics and all that, I'm like, even if he is, no. Granted, I have to state this pretty emphatically because I mean, people like Ham and all these will misinterpret what I'm talking about because they're stupid. But let me fix my camera a bit. Don't know why I'm off center. And Ebenezer Scrooge is not a good person at the start of the story. He is not a good person. He is not being benevolent of himself. He is not interested in anybody other than his own well-being. And those are bad traits. It's not a good thing to be like that. And that's the ultimate story. Yeah, sorry about that. Oh, hey, loudmouth.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Ebenezer Scrooge is not a good guy. But,
well, he is at the end of the story.
well, yeah, he is at the end story. He changes his ways. He starts embodying Christmas. I'm not going to get into that particular discussion because that's going to, you know, that's a whole other can of worms.
Scrooge
And
was better
maybe
than
I'll.
his word. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good city has ever seen.
Yeah. But there is this idea that as long as he was greedy and as long as he was running his business and then not only was he a terrible person, but everything he did was evil. Now that's a myth that I'm intending to, depending to just obliterate in this stream. And so the other thing I was
Well, it
coming,
wasn't really that Scrooge was a businessman that made him bad. It was his indifference to the people around him. It was kind of his greed, his sociopathy that he seemed to have that he abandons by the end of the story.
yeah. So, and as I was thinking about this, I was kind of like, okay, so the overall moral of the Christmas Carol is a good moral, but the way people are interpreting it currently is a problem for me. It's so, and there's a quote from a character in the books Atlas Shrugged named Ragnar Danishold, and so he says that he is going to kill Robin Hood, and when asked
Oh
what he
yeah,
means
yeah.
by that, he
Why
says,
Robin Hood? Why not Santa Claus?
yeah, he says Robin Hood is not remembered as a champion of property, but as a champion of need, not as a defender of the robbed, but as a provider to the of the poor. He is held to be the first man who assumed a halo of virtue by practicing charity with wealth which was not his own, by giving away goods which he did not produce, by making others pay for the luxury of his pity. He is a man who became a symbol of the idea that need, not achievement, is the source of right. That we do not have to produce, only to want. That the earned does not belong to us, but the unearned does. He became a justification for the mediocrity who, unable to make their own living, had demanded the power to dispose of the property of his betters by claiming his willingness to devote his life to his inferiors at the price of robbing his superiors. Yeah, I'm not going to finish the full quote, but it's absolutely brilliant book. If you haven't ever read Atlas Shrugged, or at least listen to the audio version, I recommend it to anybody else watching that, or who may end up watching this or may end up joining this. You gotta at least read through it once.
It's a little overly lengthy, though.
Yeah, it is incredibly long-winded, and the John Galt speech is quite possibly the worst part of the book, and it goes on for 13 pages or something like that. And it's like, that speech is completely unnecessary. At this point in the book, if you're actually paying attention and John Galt's speech is entirely, it adds nothing new to the narrative or to the point has been hammered home, and then she goes like, oh, well, by the way, I need to make this big, long speech, and you're like, dude, we got the point. We got the point.
Well, as I've said about Atlas Shrugged, essentially the book is a sex fantasy.
No, and The Fountainhead even more so. But going back to the story of Ebenezer Scrooge, this is something that people, they focus on the end of the book when Ebenezer Scrooge is giving to charity. He's paying for, he's giving away money to Tiny Tim and Bob Cratchit, paying for Tiny Tim's surgery or whatever he needs to get better. It's probably just lack of proper nutrition that seems to be the source of Tiny Tim's ailment.
Right.
Which, at the time,
There's probably an addition.
Yeah, so everybody focuses on the end. It's like, oh, that's when he became a good person.
You get an ailment, you get a natural cripple.
Yeah. But that's the...
prisons? Are there no workhouses? He didn't seem to have too much of a problem with taxpayer-funded services, did he?
No, he did not. But people looking at that story walk away with the idea that when Ebenezer Scrooge was just focused on his business, that was evil. That was bad. Nope, can't just do that. Can't just focus on your business. That's what evil people do. Now, like I said at the start, that's not the best thing to do.
Right.
It's not...
Yeah, business, mankind was my business. The common good was my business. Yes. So
there's the idea that, throughout the story, that was... okay, I will state, that's not good enough. But the idea that it's wrong to begin with is something that needs to be done away with, and that's the... Because, so there's just... What Ebenezer Scrooge's position was at that point was he was doing a good for mankind despite himself. And that's what the idea behind capitalism overall. Because, the story of Ebenezer Scrooge has been... It's a narrative that people who are in support of socialism can get behind and use. It's like, oh, see, he was a businessman, and that was bad, and then he became this, he's giving it all away, and that's when he's good. And you're like... That doesn't make any sense to anybody who's looking at the story. It's like, well, if he never became a businessman in the first place, if he never had surplus, if he never had a fortune to give away, he could never become the good guy at the end.
Right.
It's one of those things that's overlooked, and yet it's the socialism view. It's like, oh, okay, see, the correct way to be is this altruistic guy who doesn't care about anything other than helping other people. And you're like,
we could go to a different Scrooge. Was Scrooge McDuck a bad duck or a bad person?
Oh no, from everything you can tell about the cartoon, he seems to be Scrooge from the A Christmas Carol after the events of the Christmas Carol, but he's walking the balance.
Very different character.
He's walking. Well, I mean, granted, he's not all Christmas centered, but he's walking the balance. He still has his love for money and business, but he also puts his family ahead of his business, and so he's walking it more. Well, it's a better depiction of the complete person.
Right.
Whereas the person described at the end of A Christmas Carol, everything is about giving away and helping other people and not doing, and you're like, and it's almost as if he had abandoned his business practices altogether, as if he had abandoned capitalism, and because it's narrowed in its focus and in its time frame.
Not really, because he was still going to run his business. He wasn't dismantling. He said he was going to make Bob Marley his partner at the end, his business partner.
Yeah. Okay, but it still doesn't. The impression is that from then on, granted he's not going to dismantle his business, but the impression is that his business is secondary at that point. It's not important.
That definitely, yes, yeah.
It is, yeah. Rather than thinking about what's good for the business, he's going to think about what's good for the people around him and try to give. I mean, essentially, like, if this was a real world situation, Bob Cratchit went from being just a regular employee. This is the thing that I don't understand, or this is my primary complaint about this, is like, Bob Cratchit has done what for the company? Showed up and done his job.
Yep.
How does he become partner? How does he become partner? He has a sick kid that Scrooge feels sorry for, and is like, oh, Tiny Tim needs to be saved, so you come up and you show up and you do your job. You make partner. Yep. That is that to me, that is an insidious idea that is tied into the story of A Christmas Carol. Because at that point, Bob Cratchit has done nothing but shown up and did what it was required of him. That's not how you get to partnership. That's not how you grow a business. That's not how you sustain a business. Just showing up that's the minimum.
Well, maybe he was a very skilled employee, and that's why.
It's not apparent from the story.
If he was a valuable employee, he wouldn't have needed to take Scrooge's bullshit, right? Would he? If he could have said, you know what? All right, fuck you, Ebenezer Scrooge. I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah, if he was actually, like, you know, if he was more than just adequate at his job, he could do that. But it sounds like he was just the bare minimum. At least from anything I could tell about the story, there's nothing unique about Bob Cratchit other than the fact that he cares about his family and he has a sick son.
Yes.
So
another thing that I can't really get over is that it mentions that his nephew was poor.
Yes.
All right, and yet.
But he was happy.
But worse than that, he seems to have like a maid at the door in every depiction I've seen. He always seems to be very well off. Like, that doesn't seem like his nephew was doing that bad.
No.
Yeah, Fred. Fred was his name. Yeah.
Because Fred is. Well, granted, this is Charles Dickens, so you got to think the time period. There isn't really a middle class at the time. So, but there isn't a real middle class, but in the story of A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge is obviously the 1%, and Fred would be, he'd be kind of like the lower middle class, and then Bob Cratchit's family, those are the poor.
Yeah.
So Fred seems to be getting by, seems to be making enough, seems to be making ends meet, doesn't have the same problems as Cratchit, whereas Cratchit is kind of... But Cratchit has done nothing to improve his situation other than asking Ebenezer Scrooge for a raise.
Right.
He's like, up, maybe I should get a raise, or maybe, hey, we should get some days off. And it's like, what have you done to earn those days off? What are you doing besides the status quo, besides the minimum? If your son is sick and you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to ask, hey, show pity on me, show mercy. If you're in a system like, because even in Dickens's days, capitalism was still, like, it was still kind of in earlier stages of it, but this was the norm. Like, you weren't bound by a feudalistic lord, and you had to get his permission to do things. If Bob Cratchit was actually exceptional at his job, he could have just gone off and done his own business, started his own business, got investors who were like, oh, hey, by the way, I run your accounts under Ebenezer Scrooge, and I'm leaving that company. If you value the service I provide to your company, sign up, start investing in my new business, become that's what he could have done. And then he could have been the boss, and he could have been like, okay, Ebenezer Scrooge, you hold your money and your position of power over people, and and you hold it with an iron fist. I'm going to show you how business should actually be done, not just and not giving money away, and just because I mean Ebenezer Scrooge seems to go from one perspective and flips it completely to the opposite by the end of the story, and that's he goes, like I said, the takeaway that most people who look at this story is not that he finds the right balance between work and caring for other people, but that he stops being greedy altogether. That he stops. Well, I mean, greedy's kind of the wrong word there, but.
Well, what if
they
could do a sequel to Christmas Carol that Scrooge, after Scrooge passes away and Bob Marley inherits his company, he starts becoming a lot worse than Scrooge was and becomes the new villain of the story?
No, I think if that happened, that company would go bankrupt and everybody would be worse off.
Yeah, could you imagine Tiny Tim as a teenager, having problems of like, well, all right, you good for nothing kid, I've been supporting your crippled ass since you were forever.
Yeah, well, I think that would be a dramatic shift in character from Bob Cratchit from the original.
Yes, it would. That's
which
a joke. Yes.
Yeah. And I understand that is a possibility given time in that business, because that's essentially what happened to Ebenezer Scrooge. Is like,
correct. Exactly.
He started off seemingly like, okay, he cares about other people, but then over time he's like, okay, I have to be ruthless. I have to be uncaring, because if I'm not ruthless, this business fails. Now, I think...
And, of course, he had his girl walk out on him, and I guess that kind of screwed him up.
Yeah. But given that the business was already a success by the time Cratchit becomes partners, I don't think he would ever get into that mindset of... And especially given Ebenezer's change in attitude towards the end, where he's basically giving away tons of money from his business and giving away everything and spending all his extra time. And I was like, if Bob Cratchit enters the business with that kind of mindset, the mindset is, oh, we now have surplus, we can give away stuff. That's a great place to be. But if you're not if you're not a part of that as it's growing to get to that surplus, that creates a problem. Instead of creating a balanced individual, you actually get a spoiled brat at that point who doesn't understand the value of money. And this is the problem we are starting to see in the United States right now, because you have a lot of older people who helped build the United States to what it is, and then you've got these younger generations who are inheriting it and have no respect for what it took to get there. And they're just like, oh, well, I can just give all of this away, and I can just... And you're like...
We just need to buy more money.
Yeah, buy more money, yeah. And we could just print more money. Oh, dude, okay. So I'm going to tie that... were you in the last week's conversation about Ocasio-Cortez, where she's talking about, well, the Pentagon spent or lost $21 trillion, so we can just... already we're a third of the way to paying for my healthcare thing. And you're like... it's... What?
Is that stupid?
Yeah. You're like... They lost 21 billion. Or was it 21?
Yeah, that
It was
gives you a lot
21
of
trillion.
money.
Yeah.
The fact that you're in a huge deficit,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money you can spend. Holy fuck.
Yeah. We already lost 21 trillion, so we can spend 21 trillion on healthcare.
I can't fathom
What?
that mindset, but I know that that kind of logic, actually, for a good chunk of the American people, will sound like sound reasoning, and that's scary to me.
Yeah, but and that's what I'm talking about. Is that's what the kind of people that come out of that surplus mentality of all they've ever known is excess, and having more than they need. That's what you get. You get people like Ocasio-Cortez who don't understand that. Oh, yeah. By the way, you have to understand how we got to that excess, and if we continue the same practices now, that excess is going to disappear, and then you're going to be back in the same situation you started with, and nobody's going to have anything. So that's why. So Ebenezer Scrooge as a person, not a good guy in the Christmas Carol. At least at the start of the story where he's being just completely uncaring about anything. The problem is he's too focused on growing his business that he lost sight of why you would want to grow a business to begin with. And ultimately, if this was a real world situation, and Ebenezer Scrooge, even if he was the only game in town as far as money lending, somebody else would come along, start a competing business, and all they would have to do is be slightly more compassionate with their customers. Just be slightly better at customer service in general. Because Ebenezer Scrooge may be really great with numbers and figures at that point in his business, but he is terrible when dealing with other people.
Yeah, that's what is it? One, he asked for some feeling regarding the death of this man, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come shows him a couple, essentially celebrating his death.
Yes.
All right, saying, "All right, don't worry, he's dead. It'll take some time for them to find a new creditor and no other man could possibly be that heartless."
Yeah. So any other creditor can come around and just be. They could be worse at the business aspect of it, worse at making money off of their loans and that sort of thing, but their business would probably surpass Ebenezer Scrooge's business, provided they are better at customer service.
Uh-huh.
So, and this is one of those other myths that needs to die when it comes to people's criticism of capitalism or people's criticism of the U.S. in general. Is the idea that... Oh, hang on, my phone is going off here. Shut up, don't care. Dang it, I lost my train of thought there. So it's, okay, so it's something that needs to die. This is, it's the idea that the way to get ahead in business is to put profits and not care about anyone else. And it's like, but that's not how history of businesses has ever worked, ever.
So
business
you
is actually...
that Ebenezer Scrooge story is basically like Patreon is now.
Yeah. Ebenezer Scrooge is... Yeah, that's a great parallel. Ebenezer Scrooge, his business is so big and he's like the number one game in town, so he can treat his customers however they want, because where else are they going to go?
Right.
But in reality, any business that gets to that point, they start to fall apart. They start to lose customers, They start to hemorrhage profits, and their competitors who aren't as good at business, but who are more compassionate or more understanding of what their customers needs, what their customer needs and what and how to fulfill those needs, they beat the better, the guy who on paper is better at business. All it takes, So
of all the people, like all those thousands of dollars Carl was generating, now going to the subscriber star, is it?
Subscribe Star, yeah.
I'm just worried that similar to why Maker support go down?
Maker support seemed to be doing everything that they said they were doing. Seemed to be on the on the ball. Seemed to be doing everything right by their creators. They lost the ability to process payments because PayPal cut them off. So they lost their payment gateway, and they had no way to facilitate payments to customers. Now,
is it likely that the same thing will happen to SubscribeStar?
Yeah, very likely, because from what I can tell, SubscribeStar does nothing different. There's nothing significant. There's nothing new. It's just, hey, we're like Patreon, but different. So there's two scenarios that can come out of SubscribeStar. Either they lose the ability to process payment because, they're reliant on a third party to do that for them. Third party pulls out support. All their they have no way of actually doing what they're doing.
They need to become PayPal themselves. Then they need to not be
yes.
reliant on any third party.
Yes, and that sounds like something that is simple and easy to incorporate, and it's not. That's something that has to be done at a ground level, or if SubscribeStar has enough money and has enough, they can do it themselves, but it's a complete overhaul of their system to do that. Or they may be able to set up their own third party, or independent from SubscribeStar, but it's a payment gateway that they would manage. That is possible as well.
What's going on?
Yeah.
But we're talking about the fact that Patreon are run by total fucking assholes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. And so, but SubscribeStar, say PayPal pulls out support, and they, then they go to Square, and Square cuts them off, and then they go to Stripe, and then Stripe cuts them off. Yeah. And they lose. Well, then they have to go and set up their own, and the time it's going to take for that. Yeah, it's possible that they could survive that and they could bring it up. But that does not. To me, that seems like a half-assed solution. The correct solution, and this is from my perspective, and this is the way is to have all that built into the foundation of your platform to begin with, and then you don't have to worry about any of this. That was my idea behind Funfair.
Yeah, they need a payment processor that doesn't rely on that to compete with Patreon. Honestly, if such a thing comes from that, I'll probably delete my Patreon and move to that. But I'm not. I'd do that right now if I was sure SubscribeStar would stay or not go under.
But here's the other thing that can happen with SubscribeStar. SubscribeStar has nothing in place, from what I can see from their documentation, from their terms of service, from the actual development of their site. They have nothing in place to prevent them becoming Patreon 2.0. So right now, they're, hey, everybody come join us. We're going to treat you. We don't practice this manifest observable behavior nonsense. Well, let's say it's probably going to be 2-3 years from now. Patreon becomes Friendster, and SubscribeStar becomes Facebook, right? What's to stop them from becoming just like the Patreon that they just usurped, right? Nothing. There's nothing in place.
That's why I don't really want Patreon to really go under. I want them to just be like one of multiple services that do the same thing, so they'll have to compete for customers.
Yeah.
And that means they won't be able to just cut off somebody for really no fucking reason whatsoever. All right, yeah, you just delete a guy's Patreon right before Christmas.
Yep.
The guy has kids. You're just going to delete it right before Christmas, and then for pretty much no reason. All right, because he said some mean words to some white supremacists.
Yeah, how dare he attack white supremacists? Yeah, so
yeah, he said
that. Granted, that is irrelevant to the point, because the point is, even if he had been venomous and had been calling people the N-word, even if he had been, even if he was saying, well, let's see, I'm trying to come up with somebody who. Okay. I'm trying to think. Okay, so Sky Williams. Okay, if he was on a stream with Sky Williams and was calling Sky Williams the N-word. Now, I don't know if you know who Sky Williams is, but from what I can tell, he's kind of this is a guy who I don't know I don't know why there would ever be anybody who would hate Sky Williams. Seems like a general, all-around nice guy. Somebody that you would not associate with that word. At least, like the only reason to call him that the N word would be skin color alone. That's from what I can tell. He's just, he's a giant video game nerd. Anyway, I don't know why anybody would, doesn't seem to have a a venomous bone in his body. Anybody I've ever seen talk about the guy.
I get the point, dude.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds
Anyway.
like you want to marry.
All right. But what I'm saying is, even if Sargon had been using this language to talk about someone like that, somebody who's generally loved by everybody on all sides, oh, dude, really? All right, someone along those lines that nobody could nobody has a beef with or anything like that. Then for Patreon to kick him off, still the wrong thing to do. Now, the fact that he was using this terminology to talk about white supremacists who were laughing at Sargon because he had his wife had a stillbirth.
No, I think the people who did that was after. I think because this was like 10 months ago that one stream.
No, that group had been attacking him about that. Now, he went on. He's on his so. Because that stream was a while ago, but then on his own channel, like within a couple of weeks or days of that, he's talking about the situation, being like, yeah, this is what was going on at that time. These groups were attacking. Yeah.
That they actually attacked him for having a stillborn child.
Yeah, and these are groups who also Sargon is 1/8 black or something like that. Some inconsequential, doesn't make any sense.
God damn, that's such assholes, those guys.
Fuck. Yeah, and they were so the reason they're attacking Sargon is he's not pure enough, and he's not talking about how we need a white nationalist state, and he's just a cuck because he's only halfway there, and I'm like, yeah, these people are absolute morons, and so they're mocking the fact that his wife and him had a stillbirth. And they are mocking the fact that, how dare you be anything but pure white? That's it. At that point, they're like, dude, you leave me alone, you guys. And he's pointing out that they are being everything that they say they hate.
Yeah,
they're being the exact opposite of what they say their ideals are. And this is something true even for Spencer when he says, "Oh yeah, but." These are the reasons we want to have a white nationalist state. And I'm like, but you think by having a white nationalist state where everybody is just white, that they will automatically have these behaviors and attitudes, and that's not the case. And in encouraging your country to be whites only, you are doing the opposite of what you say are the important things that would come about because everybody's white. It is absolutely bizarre how somebody can think that have those two opposing values in their heads. It's like, oh well, that's because white people are generally more benevolent, and white people are, they generally care more about these sorts of things, and then we'd have this universal healthcare system, and I'm like, that's not inherently white, and in getting to that position, you are kicking all these other people out and being the opposite of what you say are good characteristics. It's just.
I will say this: anyone who mocks someone for having a stillbirth pregnancy can eat shit and die. That is, I'm sorry. That's something that just makes my blood boil. But,
when I defended when I said that Ethan Ralph's fundraiser shouldn't have been rejected by that charity, I was not in any way implying that Ethan Ralph is in any way a decent human being. Just that it's money for sick kids. I'd rather go to the sick kids than go back to him and his fans. Ethan Ralph is a scumbag. Okay, a grade A, massive dirtbag. All right, and so no doubt, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I don't know enough about him, but from what I understand, not a good guy.
No,
doesn't matter. That has no bearing. Yeah.
Right. That the whole thing with Sargon being made fun of for his wife having a miscarriage or stillborn birth is similar to what happened with Thunderfoot and his father, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
because
Jenny McDermott was mocking Thunderfoot's dad's death, and a number of people were, and I just thought that was like one of the most disgusting things you could do. I don't care if I
Yeah, it was.
I don't care if in a few years like I ended up not liking any of you people. Like if I found out like Loudmouth's parents had passed away, I'd probably send him a message, offering condolences, or I just wouldn't say anything. Like, it's not that hard.
yeah, and it is very good parallel because I mean, because Thunderfoot was talking about anti-feminism and yet was still had all these things that contradicted what he was saying. So he was taking it halfway, and feminists hated him for that, and so he was basically hated on both sides, which is because it's kind of odd. I mean, it's right. Sargon was one of those people who was calling Thunderfoot out on his contradicting perspectives, because Thunderfoot was he was criticizing feminism, but then was like, oh, that stuff over there, that's fine, and you're like, no, it's the same problem, dude.
There was like a tiff between the two because Sargon was on a live stream where they joked about the murder of one of the members of the Skeptic Feminist, and I don't know. I agree.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, there was a huge tiff between them.
Yeah, so there's but feminists were attacking Thunderfoot.
It was Jenny McDermott,
Yeah,
Laughing Witch, Kevin Logan, and Bewildered Ape.
yeah. And here's a big difference in the situation.
Logan, did apologize for his behavior there. I guess so. To be fair.
Yeah. So they were mocking Thunderfoot, and because of the death of his father, and were bringing that up because they knew it was a sore spot for him at the time. And conversely, it was the people who were the anti-SJWs and all this sort of thing. Were like, dude, even though they didn't agree with Thunderfoot and like agree with him on all his positions, and they're like, dude, Thunderfoot is wrong here and here. They came out in defense of Thunderfoot in a lot of areas because they're like, dude, yeah, what feminists are doing right now to Thunderfoot, not okay, dude, not acceptable.
And I think even Sargon defend him also.
Yeah, Sargon came out in defense of Thunderfoot in that situation, and rightfully so.
And basically, kind of the whole drama with the Skeptic Feminist was kind of whether making dark humor at so soon after a tragedy was crossing the line, and it's kind of an arbitrary debate, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so so we started talking about this because Patreon is
right.
Is the Ebenezer Scrooge currently, because they are the only game in town and they're running it. They have no sympathy for their customers. Now, in the story of A Christmas Carol, all it would take is somebody to make a half-assed competitor. Like, hey, they don't have to be as good at what they do, they don't have to be number one, but as long as they treat their customers right, they will start building a reputation for themselves, start building a business, and eventually become number one in that industry, because they're like, oh, it's just like Ebenezer Scrooge's business, only they actually care about their customers. Yeah. Okay, I even if they aren't giving me as much of a rate of return, I'm going to take that company any day of the week over Ebenezer Scrooge's business.
Basically, the other company can have like a better deal. Like in Christmas Carol, if you didn't pay the rent for the houses, you would get kicked out. The other company could have you could pay half now and half.
And ultimately, Ebenezer's business practices in that is going to earn him more of a profit in the short term and reduce his profits in the long term. And that's what I was saying, is like, this is a myth in the United States that needs to die. Companies that put short-term profits ahead of what their customers want will lose in the long run. These are the companies that don't stick around. These are the companies that lose to a competitor who is saying, hey, I'm willing to take a slight decrease in my current profits in order to appease my customers, or in order to be more compassionate to my customers, and that is a better long-term strategy for a business. And that business grows faster and grows more consistently. There's so many examples of this throughout. If you're studying economics, and you look at all these businesses, the companies that were kind of top dog that for one point in time that lost everything and now are no longer in existence, it's because of that sort of thing. Is their competitor often was not as good. Their competitors often didn't build a better mousetrap. Their competitors simply said, okay, this is what they do and customers don't like. Okay, if we do 90% of what this other company does, and we just do, like, if our customers just like us and we have a good reputation with our customers, doesn't matter that 10% where we're not as good as the other competitor. It doesn't matter. It'll be ignored because our customers like us over the other business.
I always, because you sell cards online in my area. I always view my customers as my lifeblood that fuels the organs in my body, basically the business. Without the customers that I treat really fairly with my deals, like every time I go to regionals, I make 10 times more the money that usually people make because I sell at a lower price. Because I know how regionals are, people are going to pay for cards, and most of the people who are dealers there will charge exuberant amount of money for like basic cards. I'll go with the base price, but I'll go a little bit lower and I make a little bit more money that way.
Yeah, because what you've adopted is you're like, it's not just the how can I maximize profits. Okay, let me specify that a different way. It's not your approach is not how can I maximize profits for a specific item, right? Because you could charge more than what you charge for your cards.
Yeah.
You are thinking more of like, okay, how do I maximize overall profits? And you're like, okay, well, I can do that by charging less for my cards. I'm still making a profit per card, but I'm going to end up selling a lot more cards at this single day event, which is going to mean more profits than had I made more profit per individual card. So you're maximizing your business as opposed to maximizing this one narrow scope of your business.
Yeah. Personally, I do that also because I've been playing the game for so many years. I know how it is in those events and how people overcharge for everything. And back when I was still playing, and I still play sometimes when I feel like it, I see people. I spent like so much money there to buy a deck, and it's like one of these days, as soon as after that event, all the cards are on the ban list already.
So people pay through the nose to get a specific card, and they can't use it in any tournaments, and then
and I'm like, people spend. I look at the prices, and I'm like, I'll go a little bit lower on it. Sure, I'll lose out the max profit, but still, I'll sell the card off, and with more of the lower cards build up, and at the end of the day, I come home with $200, where a person sold a set of upstart goblins for $60. I come with $200 by selling the same amount just for a little bit lower. It's a very and still my fiance to this day say I should go to business school.
How long have you forgot to ask? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'll let that question go through first. All right.
How long have you been doing this?
About 3 years.
Okay. All right. So what was you gonna say?
I was gonna say, why do they think you need to go to business school? Because it sounds like you're already doing it right. I think if you went to business school, they might actually either tell you what you already know or what you're already doing, or they might be more likely to tell you to do something that's actually gonna hurt your business in the long run.
She wants me to get a degree, actually.
Oh, okay, so it's about a degree. Okay, yeah, piece of paper. Yeah, not necessarily like, hey, you don't know enough. Or you're missing something. No, because it seems like your business, at least as far as that goes, is doing okay. Yeah, the piece of paper is, it's one of those things. Is ultimately it's worthless. It doesn't prove anything, and yet it's not for you. It's for other people because other people put so much stock in it. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Other than that, I finally got work. I work at Dollar Tree, which is fun.
Ooh, I was like, not saying, not something against Dollar Tree, but Dollar Tree as a whole seems to not be doing well as a company. So
I gotta.
Yeah.
I'm gonna agree with you on that. Even though I work there, I see how bad it gets sometimes.
yeah, they seem to be kind of bleeding money, and that's true for like a lot of brick and mortar stores.
Oh, believe me, I know
Yeah.
why in my area a lot because I live in Philadelphia. It's because we have a soda tax now, and back then you could go into Dollar Tree and get a 3 liter of soda for $1. Then go to Walmart and get a 2 liter for like $4 with the sugar tax and everything. And now, but the only good thing now at Dollar Tree we have now is 20 ounces of soda for like $1 still, hence more than going to the store across the street, ShopRite, where it's $2.75.
I remember hearing about I thought there was a soda tax in a city in Washington State. I don't know if it was a statewide soda tax, but their premise for why they were creating the soda tax, like the entire purpose was defeated in and of itself because they wanted people to be healthy, but then they wanted to put taxes on soda so people would be healthy, but people still bought the soda anyway. So they're actually making some revenue, and they needed more revenue to pay for the new programs they were instilling. And the purpose of making people healthy, it's like, well, do you want to make people healthy, or do you want them to do you want that revenue to pay for your new programs in that state? It was very ironic.
Yeah, because if people actually stop buying more soda, then you stop funding this thing.
Kind of funny with my area, they said it's for the children, and it never went to the children.
Oh yeah.
Think of the children.
Yeah, somebody was talking about this I think about a month ago with me. They were talking about, so in St. Louis, they legalized all these casinos, and what they were selling people on the idea is like, oh, well, we're gonna have these casinos, and they're because casinos used to be limited, they had to be built along the water because then they're not actually on the land, and gets this kind of a loophole as far as getting around. And then eventually they voted like, okay, have the casinos build these big structures on the land so that way they can grow, and we can tax the casinos, and we're going to use those to fund our education programs in St. Louis. And everybody's like, oh, okay, that sounds great. And they sign up, they vote this, and this all gets passed. These casinos build these massive casinos in the St. Charles area out here. And what they did, so the tax revenue went to education, and then the state pulled all of their previous funding out of the education. And it's like, wait a minute. This was supposed to improve our education, and all you did was replace how we're paying for our education.
Yeah. That's like, and it brings a new facet, crime and prostitution now, because where we have parks and Sugar House, a lot of people don't go down there because you see a whole bevy of prostitutes and people getting mugged and scams going on 24/7 down there.
Yeah, and then the people are like, well, you sold this on the idea that our education system was going to get better. Our education system is neutral, and you now have more money to spend on the stuff we didn't want.
Yeah.
That's politics, like what they always do, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah. So it's okay. Because we started talking about Patreon and Subscribestar and all that sort of thing, and unfortunately we lost Loudmouth in there. But
I'm surprised Sargon got kicked from Patreon, where Darkside Phil does a whole bunch of shitty ass things, and he's still on Patreon.
Yeah, the guy is.
I don't know who that is.
He's a pretty shady guy, pretty much a joke, but yeah, it's pretty. Just from looking at his Patreon and everything, he's not using it to engage with fans. He's just using it to stay financially afloat, where he's clearly he has no ability to maintain money or to handle money. He's pretty much just a fraud. That's the best way to describe him.
All right. But yeah, so the Sargon situation, Patreon is hemorrhaging subscribers and all that sort of thing, and a lot of, and actually I just saw Notch posting on Twitter how he is withdrawing support of Patreon. I don't know if he was actually subscribed to anybody through Patreon, but if you don't know who Notch is, he's the guy who did Minecraft. Yeah, and he's filthy stinking rich and whatever, and he is kind of like Elon Musk, only he's much better at trolling on Twitter and various platforms. So I think what he was making fun of Patreon was just more of him trolling. I don't think he actually supports anybody financially via Patreon to begin with.
Yeah, Musk might have those Tesla cars and flamethrowers. Notch has diamond swords and diamond armor.
Yeah, so Elon Musk has been trolling on Twitter and all that sort of thing, but Notch, I don't think Notch has ever not been trolling. Like, Elon Musk still uses Twitter for, like, legitimate stuff and, enters serious mode. I don't think Notch has a serious mode on Twitter. Anyway, but it's pretty funny to see somebody like that, making fun of oh, here's the other thing that just happened, dude. I just saw this. YouTube Rewind is now the most disliked video on YouTube.
I saw that.
No.
10 million downvotes.
Dude, and YouTube had to acknowledge it. They had it on their Twitter page, like, yep, we screwed up.
Yeah, I love how they brought a Twitch streamer on YouTube.
Yeah.
One celebrity didn't even have a YouTube channel, and even PewDiePie's like, why am I not in this?
Yeah, it's why? Yeah, well, yeah, why he hasn't been in it in 2 years? And you're like, dude, he is still #1 on YouTube. Why is no mention of him or anything revolving? Yeah, it's all of these major things that happened on YouTube, like that were, that were making the headlines that everybody was talking about. No mention of them. Instead,
the only one I can say that was pretty good was Markiplier, because it is raising for cancer.
Hmm.
But I'm surprised they brought the Wonderful World of Drag in there. And my dick went soft.
Oh, I haven't seen the full video because I just like, dude, this is...
They made an Are You Afraid of a Dark reference.
Yeah, but the whole thing was a little too cringy for me. I'm like, dude, yeah, I can't. I don't know who half of these people are. I recognize maybe 2 of the people, and I'm like...
Yeah.
I was like, that's... And a lot of... I mean, I'm not alone in that, because everybody else is like, who is that? Who is that? Like, who are all these people? Why are they on YouTube Rewind? Why were they picked to be here?
Yeah.
They have more than 1 million subscribers, I guess, but... That's like 200 something YouTubers now, so...
They brought Will Smith in it, and half kids these generations don't know who Will Smith is.
Yeah, what... Has he done anything, like... What was the last big project he was in? After Earth?
Shark Tale?
No, Shark... He was in stuff after... Because Hancock was kind of big.
Yeah, Hancock. I Am Legend was pretty good.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't resonate with the YouTube audience, though. I'm trying to think of what... I think Hancock would be the only thing they would recognize Will Smith from, and that's not a...
Or Men in Black.
Yeah, possibly Men in... I'm not sure if that was before or after. Like, because Men in Black 3, right? That's...
Yeah.
They would probably recognize him from that, but outside of that... If those are your 2 go-to movies... Yeah. The YouTube audience, like, right, because the what everybody says is YouTube is just a bunch of 9-year-olds, right? That's the PewDiePie army is 9-year-olds. Although statistically that's impossible, and also if you see some of the efforts that has gone into the subscribe to PewDiePie campaigns. No, these are older audiences. There's no way these are 9-year-olds.
The only audience is 9-year-olds and younger is the Paul Brothers audience.
Yes. Yeah, that is based on all the information and the way their fans go about things, and then the comment section, their audience skews younger. Whereas PewDiePie seems to have kind of all over the place. He's got, and this is one of the things is Jordan Peterson did a tweet about subscribing to PewDiePie. So his audience, and Jordan Peterson's audience is men in their 20s and 30s. And but this message or whatever, that even though it was tongue-in-cheek kind of a joke on Peterson and Rubin,
Oh yeah.
that it resonates with their audience because 20 and 30-year-olds, despite all, are still people that subscribe to PewDiePie. The other thing is, Felix did a meme review with Ben Shapiro. 9-year-olds don't care about Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro appeals to 20 and 30-year-olds, which means PewDiePie's audience, you're like, okay, they understand his audience is older than that, and the 9-year-old army thing is a big myth. Anyway, not trying to, let's go, okay, so.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I kind of was laughing my ass off with it, the whole Ben Shapiro PewDiePie thing. I watch Quentin reviews a lot, and he flipped biscuits. He made a video on it, then took it down and made a video on the whole T-Series versus PewDiePie thing, saying it's pathetic and stuff, but he didn't realize it was a meme and took it down.
Oh my god, that thing has been hilarious to watch. T-Series is trailing PewDiePie by barely 1 million subscribers. It's fucking close.
It's
close, but I heard there's an investigation on T-Series now.
Really?
Yeah, because of botting.
Yeah, it's got. I mean, granted, there are a lot of people in India, and the internet is not as prevalent there, and it's growing pretty rapidly at the moment. So that could explain a lot of the T-Series growth. But some of that stuff is like, no, these are paid for accounts. These are not real people. Well, one of the big factors to that is if you look at the interactions on T-Series' videos, the number of views on their individual videos, the number of comments and they have this huge subscriber base, and nobody's watching their stuff. Nobody's interacting with it.
Yeah, or they have the same comments repeated all the time.
Yep. Yeah, if they do comment, it's copy paste, and you're like, well, if you go to any other, there are channels that have 10 million that have like twice or 3 times the interaction as this channel with 70 million. And you're like,
It's like back then with the children's channels, like the Spider-Man and Elsa videos, the copy paste comments that were constantly showing up.
Yeah. Because they're taking advantage of YouTube's algorithms, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with that. Anyway, that's not relevant to the main topic, but the Patreon thing was that was a great analogy brought up by Loudmouth, because there's this stupid idea that businesses only care about the bottom dollar, and therefore they don't care about their customers. That doesn't make any sense, because if they only care about the bottom dollar, they have to care about their customers, because having quality customer service and being compassionate to your customers, there's that adage or that saying that's in business that people who are anti-business don't seem to get. The customer is always right. Right? You go to anybody who runs like any kind of store, retail or whatever, they're going to tell you the customer's always right. Now, what this means is if you have a customer who comes in and says that, you sold them a bad product, you sold them something that was damaged or whatever, it doesn't work. Doesn't matter if they don't have a receipt, doesn't matter if you're like, we don't even sell that thing. Walmart will give those people a refund. So ultimately, it's costing Walmart money to take back said item that is broken or that they don't even sell in the first place. Because it's $20-$30 or whatever. Oh, and if they only cared about money, no, they wouldn't dare do this kind of policy. But the reason Walmart will give refunds and will take items that they don't even sell in the first place from customers, because a customer is always right. And what that does is that actually grows their business, because they keep a good reputation.
Yeah.
So even if they lose money in the short term, they are gaining more customers and keeping their customer base in the long run.
Even if they have like a product that's sold out, 9 times out of 10 they'll go up and you can get a rain check for it.
Yeah. Those are the types of things that kind of cost them money in the short term. But it keeps their business's reputation.
Mhm.
People are like, oh, these people, like, even though Walmart doesn't care, Walmart ultimately is, corporate entity with no actual feelings. I mean, granted, the individual people in the business may care and all that sort of thing, but Walmart corporate has no heart, has no feelings, has no soul. This Walmart is, for all intents and purposes, Ebenezer Scrooge, if you made the real world comparison. And yet, the actions of that company are not the same actions that we see the actual character, Ebenezer Scrooge, doing in his business. Because what Ebenezer Scrooge does is people come in and say, oh, you know what, we just give us an extra month to pay you back. And he's like, oh, nope, no, I'm not giving you extra month. You gotta pay, you gotta owe your money, and if you don't pay me, whatever, I'm gonna take your house and all that sort of thing. He's this, absolutely ruthless with these people who come in begging for a little sympathy. If a real business acted in that way, they would be hemorrhaging customers.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't sustain themselves. Yeah. And it's exactly, so even if a company doesn't care at all about their customers, they cannot care about their customers all they want, but they have to act as if they care about their customers. If they don't even bother to act as if they care about their customers, they are going to lose market share. Their business is going to decline overall. That's one of the things that this myth that, oh, companies don't care about people. So what? Doesn't matter if the company doesn't care about people, they still have to act as if they care about people. Because the second they stop doing that, the second their business starts shrinking.
It's proper business ethics for a company to care about the customers. Even though they really only see them as a walking wallet half the time.
And this is something that Google has lost sight of. Because their original mantra was "do no evil," and they have stopped. That is no longer the motto for the company of the "do no evil," and their business is slowing down. It is not growing at the rate that it used to. They are actually hemorrhaging money, losing subscribers, losing advertisers, and all. They're still number one, and it's going to take a while for their business to fade out, but they are losing market share to their competitors because they stopped putting customers first.
Yeah, look, I'm going to bring a good recent case up with YouTube not caring about their content creators with Monkey Jones. He got his channel terminated, both channels, for these Elliot Rodger things about a documentary on it and making funny videos of it, making fun of Elliot Rodgers. And he got 2 strikes, and he finally got his 3rd strike on a video that had 0 views and it was privated.
Oof.
Logan Paul, on the other hand, makes a video, makes fun of a guy who committed suicide in the forest. He only gets a slap on the wrist.
Yep. That's,
and it shows how what you brought about Google being this corporate entity only caring about money more than customers. This proves the same thing with YouTube as well, because YouTube is an offshoot of Google.
Yeah. So what YouTube has done in this situation is they've put their temporary financial gain, or what is the most beneficial profit-wise right now. Because in the short term, Logan Paul is what's paying their bills. In the short term, Logan Paul is what's getting. But and actually, I watched I don't know if this was Film Theorist. I've been kind of I've had Film Theorist and Game Theorist playing in the background over the past couple of days because
I love
incredibly smart. I'm like, dude, how is that? Yeah.
Even though in the commentary community where I'm from, a lot of people love debunking those videos.
Debunking them. Yeah, I was like, dude, these are really well made. Granted, a lot of the times he's making these huge jumps and all that sort of thing. But
with the Dr. Light one in Mega Man, who would you blame? The company or the guy using the gun?
Yeah.
But I love.
Yeah, but I mean, okay. So the reason I bring that up is because he did this really excellent analysis of the Logan Paul situation, and how they're actually what the Paul brothers are doing is they're taking advantage of the YouTube system, the way that YouTube is actually currently programmed, and they're like, okay, YouTube for whatever reason, they've built their platform around sensationalism. So in the long term, even though Logan Paul and them, they do crazy, stupid, terrible things, and it doesn't matter. Ultimately, they grow their audience, and they have potential to earn more money, which means YouTube is kind of stuck in the situation where they're like, these are our biggest draws at the moment. If we cut them off, we lose money. So even though we don't like what they're doing, or we don't like what they're doing, we're going to keep them around. We're going to keep supporting them. We're going to keep, because that's how we're making our money right now. Yeah. So it's this weird, it's kind of a downward spiral that they've locked themselves in, because they're supporting creators that are on their platform that are very... Oh, did we just lose everybody?
No, you got me.
Oh, I think we just lost S-Man then. For a second there. So they're stuck in these relationships with creators that are loathed by a vast majority of their ultimate customer base. And yeah, so PewDiePie's number one as far as subscriber base and all that sort of thing. And they completely shut him out, and yet they are, sucking the dicks of the Paul brothers. And you're like,
oh yeah,
everybody hates the Paul brothers. Practically everybody loves PewDiePie. And YouTube is putting their money on the Paul brothers and ignoring PewDiePie. And they're like, PewDiePie doesn't get to... He's completely ostracized. No, we don't want to... Oh, PewDiePie's on our channel. Oh, I can't believe it. They're trying to ignore him and trying to... Whatever, he's taboo, and he's,
Yeah.
He's the leper of the YouTube community.
Yeah,
but the customers on YouTube are like, dude, he's number one. He creates good content. He's funny. He's,
Yeah, they even let people like Daniel Keem still on there as well.
Yeah, but it's in YouTube's short-term interest to maintain these relationships, to keep the Paul brothers around, to promote the Logan Paul and Jake Paul videos. It is not in their long-term best interest to continue to do this. And that's what they've lost sight of. They've lost sight of the long-term, what's going to grow their business overall. They've lost sight of that, and they've started focusing on the temporary and the narrow. And if you're watching the videos that is coming out with the CEOs of Google and of YouTube, when they're talking about this like in more private settings, where they're talking like internally to their staff and all of this sort of thing, it's painfully obvious that the current administration, granted they've had, Google's been around for 20 years, the people who are in control right now are not the same people who started off in control.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the full mindset of the original Google team, but I do know currently the people that they've put in charge, and like the Susan Wojcicki, and these are all like radical leftists that have taken over and become in the highest position. It is overwhelmingly these radical leftists, and you're like, oh, that kind of explains their change in business practice and business models, because leftists ultimately, they are short-sighted in every way you can think about it. It's the
and the funniest thing is saying that the quartering always said, and Google is now following this mantra that Jeremy, aka the quartering, would say: get woke and go broke.
Yes, and that is the typical leftists' ideology. Like, they focus, because if you look at Democrats' policy right now, where they're like, oh, we need to import all these, migrants, and not just Democrats, but I mean, because this is a European problem as well. But they're like, oh, we need to help these migrants. We need to help them. And they're like, okay, so that's the good thing in the short term. And if you look at the Democrats' policies, they want all these migrants to come in because ultimately they're going to end up voting for Democrats, and Democrats get power of the House. But long term, it's not in the best interest of the United States, and ultimately it's going to cripple the country financially if we continue to adopt what the Democrats want. And like, yeah, they're looking for, hey, how do we increase our voter basis and win next election? And you're like, okay, that will help you in 4 years from now. What happens? What happens 10 years? 12 years down the road?
Yeah,
the country goes bankrupt.
Yeah,
no, we can't do this.
Yeah, because we already have a big deficit because of Reagan, and the Democrats are doing the same crimes that Reagan did, increasing the deficit.
Yeah, increasing the deficit and increasing our financial burden, and if the amount of imported migrants or illegal immigrants or whatever that. Depending on the situation, right? It depends on if they come here illegally or if they come here legally. And anyway, the massive influx of people from the third world into the U.S., which is what Democrats want,
and you have
that's ultimately going to cripple us financially.
Also with the whole thing, we have another thing to be aware of: crime.
Yes,
crime will go up. Homelessness will go up.
And here's the other thing is that Democrats like to say that, like, oh yeah, but illegal immigrants don't use more welfare programs than the natural born citizens, and they'll cite these statistics and like, that's because you're considered a natural born citizen even if your parents are illegal immigrants, as long as you were born in the United States. So what often happens is people come here illegally, have a child here, that assign that child up for welfare benefits and for social programs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but it's a national, it's a natural born citizen who's taking advantage of these programs and like to support their illegal parents.
Or the other way is get married on U.S. soil. Basically, the whole Russian mail order bride thing.
Yeah. So that is not as prominent, but yeah, and again, welfare benefits that come with that and all that. So even though the person claiming the benefit is a legal U.S. citizen, that money is still supporting the illegal ones. And you're like, it's because leftists are short-sighted and they're like, oh, hey, look, all these benefits are actually going to natural-born citizens. And like, but those natural-born citizens wouldn't have applied for those benefits if their parents were legal, if their spouses were legal, if these people who came to the country were doing it the right way, they wouldn't be applying for these benefits in the first place. So
the funny thing with the Russian mail order brides back then, they would get married, divorced, crippling the guy, and still get the benefits. It's so freaking hilarious.
Yeah. Well, not hilarious for the guy, but
yeah, but it's so hilarious because Democrats don't even look at that point.
No, that extremely short-sighted. They're looking for the temporary gains, not for what's long-term a successful strategy, which is why they're like, oh, socialism and communism, and like, oh, socialism, communism. If you look at a 5-year time frame, oh, they're amazing. Look at all these benefits. Look at how all this money that's going to help the poor and all this education benefits, and then 15 years you get Venezuela. Or the USSR, or Cuba, or...
Yeah, I was going to bring up the good old fact about Soviet Russia when they switched to democracy. When they were communists and they switched to democracy, most people resorted to prostitution at that point and Russian gangs.
Yeah, there was an article that just came out about Venezuela where there's, people who used to be professional ballerinas and dancers are now prostitutes down there because they can't afford to live. And because I saw this, people were putting these two articles next to each other because I think one was from Vice and they were talking about, or it was Vox or Vice or one of those lefty, or it might have been Slate. Anyway, they posted this article about women have better sex under socialism. And then right next to it, they put this article where it was talking about these professional, or what used to be a professional ballerina, unable to be a professional dancer and is now submitting herself to prostitution just so she can feed herself.
And it's so good that she got 15 STDs.
Yeah, better sex, provided better sex means that you enjoy prostitution.
And then getting a whole bunch of STDs while at it.
Yeah.
And crippling all the health bills.
Well, that's the other thing is in these countries that are socialized, usually they adopt more, what's the word, puritanical, right? They adopt more puritanical stances when it comes to prostitution. Like, if you look at Cuba and a lot of these socialist countries, when it comes to what you're allowed to do sex-wise and all that sort of thing, they have this authoritarian puritanical view that's similar to, kind of early Protestant Christians and all that sort of thing. So even in Venezuela, prostitution, from what I can understand, is illegal. Even under their system where everybody's starving and the whole system is falling apart, they're still like, oh, prostitution, we can't have that in our country. What do you want our country to start falling apart?
Well, you're a prostitute. Okay, here you go to jail for quite a while, and you get the weirdest special prostitution badge, a red A.
Yeah, and so because it's illegal, people are more likely to get involved in situations where criminals will abuse them, where they get into situations where they can't get help from the police because, hey, if they go to the cops, they got to tell people that they've been, an illegal prostitute. It creates all of these problems with, like you were talking about, STDs, and and what is a prostitute going to do about it? Nothing. There's no recourse that they can take because they are what they're doing is on the black market. And if you're doing something on the black market, you can't exactly complain when someone robs you.
Or rapes you. And then you have to resort to drugs to combat the PTSD while you're still on the corner spreading your legs.
Compare that to what they do at the Bunny Ranch. Now, granted, I don't agree with the idea of prostitution. I don't think it is ultimately a good thing, but I don't think it's going to be something. It's not something that if we ban it will go away. But if you compare the Bunny Ranch, which women voluntarily join, they choose their own clients. They are not forced to have sex with anybody they don't choose to. They have bouncers who facilitate that particular club, as in, because with illegal prostitution, there's a John or whatever and that sort of thing. Usually, he provides the support or the to make sure that the women don't get beat up and all that sort of thing. And he's there for their protection. Well, at the Bunny Ranch, there's a legitimate bouncer who actually is looking out for the best interest of the girl. When you're talking about illegal prostitution, the one abusing the woman is more times than not the John.
So
it's like, usually the prostitute is more afraid of the guy who's supposed to be protecting her than she is from her customers. But the Bunny Ranch is the opposite way. It's,
or how the left would view it, there's socialism prostitution, and then there's fascism prostitution.
Yeah, they would consider the Bunny Ranch to be fascist prostitution, and then the black market in socialist country prostitution, they're like, oh, but that's the better one. And you're like, the one where there's rampant spreading of diseases because these women not only aren't getting checked, and it's not required, but they aren't getting checked because they don't want people to start investigating their business.
Oh, yeah.
Like, hey, this woman keeps coming in here every month to check for STDs. Where do you think the cops are going to start investigating? It's like, well...
and then there's abortion clinics. Oh, this woman keeps coming in for abortion.
Yeah, that's going to raise red flags with authorities if they're trying to crack down on prostitution. It's like, well, maybe we should go to the women who keep coming in here for annual check, or keep coming in here for monthly checkups on their STD status because they're having a lot of sex, and they have money to pay for these checkups. So, that's odd for our system.
Yeah, I
th-
mean, gets the old noggin a jar gears a turning.
yeah, those are the, if you're looking for red flags, those are the types of things. So what it means is that these people who are in this industry, they are not likely to get they're not likely to do what they need to do in order to protect themselves in their industry. Which, if you take it to the bunny ranch, I would say right now it is required for the women who sell their sex there to get monthly checkups as far as screened for STDs. I would say, or I would bet good money that if that was not a requirement by the state, they would still continue that practice. If it was not required by law, you would still see those women getting the exact same checkups. Because ultimately, that's kind of like, if you're a customer, are you going to go to the bunny ranch and you're like, oh, dude, it's been a year since this chick has had her STD screening. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
It's in their best interest as a business to say, hey, look, I just got checked yesterday. I just got checked last week. I'm clean. That even if it wasn't required by law in the state of Nevada in order for this that business to continue to operate, they would still do what is best for their customers and what is good for their own, So I would say, yeah, even if it wasn't the law of the land, they would still do this. They would still get the regular checks. They would still have that bouncer. They would still, it just makes, it's in their best interest to spend the extra money and because it helps sustain their business. That's
and also keep their reputation.
Yes, and that is well. So that is the core of what I'm talking about when it comes to the Christmas Carol. And so I haven't really touched too much on why it is more benevolent than charity, and I guess we'll get to that in the second half here, but the myth behind Ebenezer Scrooge is that his company would still be successful even if he was operating under these practices. And it's been proven time and time again that companies are made and broken by their reputation. Reputation is something that you cannot pay for, and once it is tarnished or lost, it is incredibly difficult to get back.
Look at the Rockefellers. J.D. Rockefeller. Perfect example.
Yeah,
and look at Carnegie Hall. Carnegie actually donated a lot of his money to build things in New York. Rockefeller didn't do that, and Rockefeller died alone. Basically.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, but I do know that Carnegie is kind of, if you look at textbooks, he's like the evil robber baron sort of thing. But if you look at the people of his time, like he's awesome. Like he's the reason we have these amazing theatrical halls, these libraries, these like
that famous saying. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice.
Yeah. So the amount of good that he did for the country overall is largely ignored in the academia, but the people who were around him at the time, they're like, dude, he's an all-around good guy. And if you in the interviews, people get like because it's that Think and Grow Rich book where he goes around and interviews all of these multi-millionaires and billionaires at the time, because this was written in what's the time frame of Think and Grow Rich? Was that the 40s?
Yeah,
I think it was written in the 40s. But anyway, all the people of his time, and he's trying to extrapolate the points of what got them to be successful as they are, and interviewing. He's talking about interviewing Carnegie and all these wildly successful individuals.
Yeah, during the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, and these people had ultimately a really positive reputation, and if you look at what they were talking about and how they were building their business and how they were operating it, they weren't these evil Ebenezer Scrooge types that were just trying to squeeze every little penny out of their customers. So, and yet people associate Carnegie, like the I guess modern people, or like the people who have only read about these, these old, the term robber baron, like, oh, how dare Rockefeller was absolutely evil, and all these people who built the railways and all of these J.P. Morgan, they're all evil industrialists, and you're like,
and don't forget about Henry Ford with the assembly line.
It's because they associate Henry Ford and Ebenezer Scrooge and say, these two guys are exactly the same. Yeah. In practice, Henry Ford was not Ebenezer Scrooge, and that's an excellent example bringing up Henry Ford. Because in the story of A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge is not paying his employees adequately. He is not paying them enough to sustain their livelihoods, which is why Bob Cratchit needs to say, hey, I need extra money. My kid is sick and I can't afford my bills.
Yeah, that's why Scrooge would make him do his laundry.
Yes, Scrooge is pinching pennies and ultimately is hurting his workforce. In the real world, Henry Ford paid his employees more than anyone else at the time. Mm-hmm. He was paying top dollar for his employees. That's what Ebenezer Scrooge would need to do in order to stay in business. He would need to be paying his employees more than what they could get anywhere else, and he wouldn't be pinching pennies and all that sort of thing. He would be increasing their salaries constantly, and in creating new job positions for new employees, because increasing salaries is an incentive to get better employees into your company.
Oh, yeah.
Which is that's the reason wages kept rising with Henry Ford. He's like, dude, I need more people, I need better people. I need more people, I need better people. The only way to get that is to continually increase your wages, so that way you make sure that your workforce is the best it can possibly be. Now, you can't increase your wages to the point where you're paying people more than they are actually bringing in value to your company, because, if it does, then you're hemorrhaging money, right? But that's
probably one thing I would say. I would rather work at a play. If I was in that setting of the Christmas Carol, I would not work at Scrooge and Marley's. I would work at Fezziwig's more likely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because Fezziwig seemed to be walking that balance. It's like he treated his employees correctly. His business was growing as a result. Scrooge didn't quite understand, and that's pretty apparent in the Christmas Carol. He didn't understand why Fezziwig was being successful, because he's like, oh, you could make more money by doing this, and you could make more money by doing this. And Fezziwig's like, no, dude, you're missing the point. that would be the making more money right now, not making more money in the long term. Fezziwig didn't explain it like that, because I very much doubt Fezziwig actually understood why his method was superior. He just knew it was. It's like instinctively, and there's a lot of people who are in business who have that. They can't explain why something works or why something is done a certain way. They just know that that's the way it should be done. I think Trump falls into that category. He can't explain why he does what he does. He just knows it's either by instinct or he's been doing it so long he doesn't realize he's doing it. And he's like, he does things that other people looking at the situation are like, dude, that's a terrible move. That's going to backfire. Oh, that's going to cut. And then it ends up working out in his favor. And you're like,
yeah, he goes by his gut.
Yeah. And Fezziwig is kind of that, okay, he was going by his gut, and his gut instincts were right. And his gut instincts were right more often than they were wrong. And Scrooge is looking as like, well, on paper, you should be doing this. You should be... Because Scrooge had a narrow-minded view of how to run a business. And...
Scrooge took a more tactical approach, where Fezziwig took a more literal gut approach.
Yeah, and it was paying off for Fezziwig. Yeah. And Scrooge didn't have those natural inclinations, and so when he started running his own business and all that sort of thing... Now, I don't know if it's not readily apparent from the story of A Christmas Carol, but I'm saying if this was a real-life institute, his business would be losing money month over month, and it would be on the decline, which in the Christmas Carol story, that's not blatantly spelled out, or at least from what I could tell, whether it seemed like his business was maintaining. didn't seem to really be growing, didn't seem to be failing. But I was like, in the real world, that business would be losing money, and that would actually increase Scrooge's penny pinching tactics, or his, and it would. So it would be this ever downward spiral. It's like, oh, we're starting to lose money, and now it would be a more rapid loss year over year as he's trying to correct it using things that don't work. So ultimately in the Christmas Carol, by the end of it, his change in attitude and mentality, I think, ultimately saves his business as well as the other people.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not usually the point that most people take away. At least from not the people that I've talked about who are talking about this sort of thing, is they seem to say Scrooge was evil at the end and he's good at the end at the beginning because he's caring about money at the beginning and he's caring about people at the end. It's like, not so much.
I really think what's happened with Scrooge was he was dealt a bad hand in life. His father didn't love him that much. His only person he loved, who was basically family to him, died, and he has during childbirth, and he has his nephew, who he didn't even talk to because he's reminded of his sister. The fact that Fezziwig was always successful, married and stuff, and Scrooge thought, hey, may I make a business too? And I met somebody I love. That ran away, and Scrooge was a victim of circumstance. That's what I view it as.
Yes and no. He was a victim of circumstance in that everybody's a victim of circumstance. There are things that are outside of your control, and some people have a lot more negative things that are outside of their control than positive. That's the nature of reality. You can't control what happens to the environment or what other people do. The only thing you control is yourself. Now, so there are a lot of bad circumstances that Ebenezer Scrooge found himself in, but he doesn't do anything to help the situation. He's everything he does is making the situation worse.
Yeah, he just brooded all the time.
Yes.
And that made him like socially cut off from people.
Yeah. So he took what should have been, oh, that's just life. How do I protect myself from that in the future? Or how do I make sure that, how do I change my behavior to either protect myself or to make sure that people want to be around me and people want to do business with me and people want to stay in a relationship with me so that way this doesn't happen again. Instead, he's like, oh, whatever, they were in the wrong and I'm just gonna, okay, fine, if that's the way you want to be. He's taken a
nihilistic approach.
Nihilistic approach. Excellent, thank you. He takes the nihilistic approach to it. Like, oh, well, if that's the way it's going to be, I'm just going to take out my anger on everyone else. And, like, he's not taking any personal responsibility for any of those situations.
Yeah.
Because, it's the, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Ebenezer Scrooge doesn't have that mentality. He's like, oh, you fool me once, oh, how dare you. And I'm like, you didn't do anything different. You keep doing what's going to keep... what you are doing and what you have locked yourself into is going to lead to more of that in the future.
Yeah, and I think when he went and with the scene with the Christmas present, when he went to his nephews and saw how his nephew views him, it really hit him right in the feels.
Yes.
And how he went to Bob Cratchit's house, even Bob says positive things about him. His family despises him a lot.
Yeah, and when he goes into the future, the people who are he's dead and they're just ripping through his stuff and they're trying to and they are laughing at his demise.
Yeah, including the people he had breakfast with all the time. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that guy died. I thought he'd never die.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, so not only Did I not protect myself? Did I not? I actually made enemies, or at least, maybe not enemies, might be a little bit too strong of a word, but I people who should have liked me and should have been sad of my death, I turned them against me. So not only
people I talk about and are now pissing on my grave.
Yeah.
Basically.
All right, so
that's what I always took from this Christmas Carol the most was how Scrooge saw how people viewed him in real life, where Scrooge thought himself, yes, I'm a successful man. But in real life, everybody else views him, wow, that guy's a dick.
Yeah. That guy's a dick. We're better off without him. Even, it doesn't matter if he's good at his job.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. We don't care. People who are good at their job are a dime a dozen. That's something that is I had to learn a hard way, and it's something that's one of those rare things that's not rare things. I shouldn't say rare. That's one of those things that I keep forgetting, and I keep thinking, it's like, well, I'm good at my job. I'm like, no. Being good at your job is not. I need to keep reminding myself of being good at your job doesn't mean squat.
Yeah.
It does. There are other things that I need to work on a personal level, and there's other things that I need to change about my actions and my behavior. And I keep going back to the mantra, oh, but I'm good at my job. And I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. People who are good at their job, there are 7-something billion people on this planet, and at least 5.5 billion of those are good at their job. It's otherwise it has to be, actually I shouldn't say maybe, at least 5 billion. At least 51% of that overall population are good at their job. Or at least adequate at their job, I should say. Maybe it's a better way of saying it. If they weren't, everything would be declining. The fact that everything is getting slightly better, more people who are good at their job than not good at their job. So they're saying, oh, I'm good at my job. That doesn't mean squat. That's not enough. And so I need to keep telling myself, okay, so I can either get, so I either need to become unexpendable, as in so good at my job, there's nobody else who could replace me, or I need, if that's not possible because I'm not physically capable or whatever, if that's not possible, I need to put myself in a situation where I have so many other things on top of being good at my job that I become indispensable. And so I don't think it's possible for me to improve my skill set or what I'm good at to the point where I become indispensable that way. So there are certain things about my character and my personality and my attitude that I need to correct in order to make myself indispensable that way. So it's like, okay, not only is this person really good at their job, but they're also really good for the company and building morale. That's what I think I need to... That's an area where I need to improve.
That's what I do, actually, with my job at Dollar Tree. Every time I'll work solid, but when a customer comes by my area, I'll say, good morning, welcome to Dollar Tree. How you doing? And I'll say, if you need help with anything, I'm glad here to help. I'll help out. I'll always try to be friendly. That's how I do it, actually. Be friendly to your customers of like, hey, I want to go back to this place because that such and such is there. They're so friendly and stuff. Basically, being good at your job, you have to be good with the work and being social as well.
Yeah, and that's something it's not the social aspect of work has always been something that's like, oh, that's not important. It's not. I don't know why people put so much emphasis on that, and I'm like, now I'm starting to realize, oh, that's actually, yeah, I have been dropping the ball in that area because I viewed it as unimportant, but it doesn't matter if I view it as unimportant or not. It's what other people view, and that's where I've been making my mistake.
It's not only good for the people, it's also good for the business.
Like, I mean, granted, I'm not. I gotta specify. I don't treat people like garbage or anything like that. But I tend to be antisocial because that's just my natural tendency. It's like, oh, I just stick to myself, keep my head down, do what I'm supposed to do, and what that results in, what I've been thinking about is what that resulted in is when my neck was on the chopping block, no one was there to stand up for me. I had people saying, oh, well, he's really good at his job, he's kind of indispensable, but that wasn't enough. So I had a job that ended in April of 2017. The contract, they had the option to renew the contract, and they had been telling me that they were going to, but when budget came around and they didn't have the budget and they had to start cutting people and letting them go, well, I had been there the shortest amount of time. Even though I was good at my job and I was doing what I was supposed to, and my supervisors had a lot of good things to say about me, but when it came down to, oh, should we keep this guy in the company or not, they put my name up, and no one was there saying, oh, we need to keep this guy, we can't let him go. Nobody was there saying, nobody was there to vouch for me and bring up reasons why I should stay. So I got cut.
You got laid off, basically.
Not necessarily, because it was a contract, and so they could have renewed me for another year, and they're just like, but why? Yeah. And when it came to, but why, but he's good at his job. That's not a good enough reason. Yeah. He's good at his job does not make up for, we can't afford to keep him around. He's good at his job does not, whereas there's other people that I've found out, even though they were trying to make these massive cuts and they were trying to reduce their expenses and all that, there's other people who didn't have my same skill set and who weren't as valuable at their job. But when their name came up, people were like, no, that guy, that guy is, for whatever reason, people knew this person's name. He was he was constantly around, and the people who were making these decisions were like, oh, well, I don't want to cut that guy. Even if he wasn't as good at his job, they're like, no, let's keep that guy around. He's good for the company overall. Yeah. But when it came to my name, the only people who knew my name were my direct supervisors. So, and my direct supervisors weren't the ones making those decisions.
And it's sad. I'm going to be honest. It's kind of sad because I can bring up a story with one of my friends who worked at probably a fast food chain. Mm-hmm. This person worked his job at the grill, did a great job and stuff. Didn't socialize that much, but the people who were kept were the ones complaining about their boyfriends cheating on them and stuff, comparing dick sizes and stuff, and not doing anything, and they got to be kept on, where this guy put his time and effort and everything, and he got laid off.
Yeah, and that's the situation. Because I'm trying to think about what I did wrong and how I could improve it, and what I've ultimately concluded is that I didn't play office politics, because office politics, I disagree with the whole institution, but whether I disagree with it or not doesn't matter, because office politics is how other people operate. It's more often than not having your name known by the people in charge often leads to you either sticking around, or you getting that promotion that other people get passed up for.
One thing I'll say, HUMANe, is if you ever get a job, this is something I do. Try to find a person who's in higher up, have a common interest. Yeah. Talk about that common interest. They're like, oh, I like talking to this person about such and such and stuff. I'll keep him around. For instance, I've been working at Dollar Tree for a week, and that it's seasonal. Yeah. I made good friends with the assistant manager. We talk a lot about Fallout, and we communicate a lot. We even talk about how we're not that far from each other. We just talk and stuff when we're at work. Mm-hmm. I found out after a week working there, they're keeping me after the season, because I also pick up the slack.
Yeah. So So what you're... Had you not built that relationship, they could have chosen to keep you around after the season, but it would be less likely. And this is something that is a little difficult for me to wrap my mind around because my mind doesn't work like that. But it doesn't matter. I should be focusing on that not being my perspective and what I would do doesn't matter. I need to start putting myself in the position of the people who are making these decisions. Like, okay, what would they do? Oh, they're more likely to keep people around who they're like, oh, that guy's a good guy. And how would they know that? Because they had a simple conversation with you. But if they're like, oh, every time I talk to this guy, it's all business. It's all about the project. And then when we stop talking about that, okay, well, I don't register with the people making those decisions. Because when they're looking like, oh, who? Joseph. Anybody remember who this guy is?
Yeah.
They don't, because I don't stand out in their minds. Because I'm just another cog in the machine that's interchangeable. But they're like, oh, dude, yeah, that's the guy I talked to at that office party. That's the guy. Oh, that's the guy who helped me with this situation.
Yeah.
Those are the people making decisions, which is kind of odd.
Yeah.
More often than not, that's how they think. They think of people who they remember, not because of, oh, well, that person saved us X amount of money. That person, brought in this project and did it on time. And that's not memorable. Oh, that's the guy who did the Christmas cards. That's what people who are in charge remember more often than not. And that's the thing that I'm like, oh, that's so backwards, and it's so bad. Doesn't matter. That's how it is. Doesn't matter if that's not the way I would do it. Doesn't matter if I was in charge, I would run it this way. Doesn't matter. That's the way it is, and I need to start changing my behavior based on the way things are.
HUMANe, I'm going to be honest. I'm an introvert, actually. I don't like talking to people half the time because half the time I'm thinking they're like, if I talk to them, I know what's going to happen when my back is turned. They're going to knife me. I'm like, in order to keep with this job, I have to start thinking outside of the box, and that's what I've been doing a lot lately. Start thinking outside of the box on situations.
Yeah. So that's something that, because I've had about a year to kind of ruminate on what I did wrong or where I misstepped and all that sort of thing. So I'm like, oh, okay, because I'm thinking. So I've brought up my younger brother a lot on these streams, and I'm like, he's got that knack, like his neck's on the chopping block, and someone yanks him out, and you're like, how? And he is a natural extrovert, so he's doing this just he's not doing this, or he's not consciously doing this, and yet it is continually saving his neck, because he builds relationships with base commander. I mean, he's in the Air Force. He knows the base commanders and people at the top of his command chain on a first name basis. He shares common interests with them. He's going out he's running various events on base and gets his name out there, and it's led to new opportunities for him. And I'm like, dude, I would never have, like, for me, I'm like, that seems backwards. That shouldn't work out for him. How is he? And then like, it's dawning on me, although, much to my chagrin, I guess that's a good word.
Oh yeah,
that's actually a superior strategy to my own when it comes to how to succeed at your job.
Yeah.
Because he is seeing promotions, he is being put into positions of power, and when something is going to happen to him, whether it's by his own fault or something that was out of his control, he's got people standing up for him saying, no, he's a good guy, we need to keep him around. I know he messed up, but I'm going to vouch for him as, I'm going to put my reputation on the line to keep him around. When my neck was on the chopping block, even though I had nothing, it wasn't in my control, it was just, how things were, I didn't have anybody in my corner. My brother, even when it's something of his own his own mistake, something that he could have easily avoided. He's got people at the top saying, no, this guy's a good guy.
Yeah.
I'm putting my reputation in lieu of his.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that. I don't have anybody in my corner. I'm like, okay, that's where I'm going wrong. Now, if I could combine the two, then I think I would be escalating beyond.
I'll give you some good advice. Sometimes the simplest things, like buying like a cup of coffee for one of your coworkers, that will resonate. Or get the break room a box of donuts.
Yeah.
Or may I ask, do you drink?
No, I do not drink.
Okay, take them out to lunch. Like somebody,
Yeah.
Those little things will add up.
Yeah, those are things that don't occur to me because those aren't things that, because I've had people take me out to lunch and I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's for me, not important, not significant. I don't remember those coworkers, and I don't think about those coworkers outside of work.
Oh yeah, but
that's me. That's my natural inclinations. That's not how a good number of everybody else thinks.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, and I'm like, okay. Again, I got to get myself out of my head and put myself in their shoes. I'm like, okay, if I was them, what would be important to me? And I'm like, oh, well, things that are important to me, Timothy Joseph, are not important to, 93% of pretty much everybody else, possibly 97%. Based on that Myers-Briggs personality test, my particular type of personality is 3%. Yeah.
I love the Megazord shirt.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
I'm a big Power Rangers fan myself. Of the Sentai.
Yeah, I was just sitting on my legs for a while. I'm like, oh, dude, I need to. Yeah.
Let me put it this way: like, if you buy a person that lunch, and you didn't know, like, hey, he bought me that lunch, which made me save enough money to get home from work. That little thing really resonates with some employees.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said. Yeah, that's something I've got to learn to play. What I've called office politics. I'm like, oh, I don't like office politics. Like, doesn't matter if I don't like it. I've got to learn to play that game, because that's what's next time when I get into a spot like that. That's what's gonna save my neck, is playing office politics.
Oh yeah. Like one thing is get a box of donuts. Everybody loves donuts.
Yeah.
Donuts in the break room is always a winner.
Yeah, because I need to do something to stand out in people's minds. And most of the time, since I keep to myself and I just keep my nose to the grindstone, I don't stand out.
Yeah, like on your break, you could, like when you go in, you say, oh, I got donuts for everybody in the break room. They'll be like, oh, we don't want to get rid of him. He's the guy who brings us donuts all the time.
Yeah. All right.
Because
that's pretty good advice.
That's a great advice right there. Sometimes that donut really gets that good notion. Even the boss was like, hey, I can't get rid of him. He brings donuts.
Yeah, and it's something as small as that. It's even though it doesn't cost too much to bring. It's a small financial investment that it's a better long-term strategy, and that's what we're talking about with this whole kind of conversation. Is okay, you gotta ignore the short term and focus on the long term. And while I don't think my work ethic was built around long-term career, since I ignored the social aspect of it, that was not in my best interest. That was short-sighted on my part, because it's like, oh, I don't want to take my time and energy to do these social things because they annoy me, and that was short-sighted on my part, and that was focusing on the temporary on my part and not looking at what is long-term beneficial to me. It's like, okay, I don't want to go to this office party because they talk about boring nonsense and the weather and sports, and I'm like, don't care. People, the boring conversations people tend to have at these office parties. I'm like, I don't want to, and so I ignore office parties. But now I'm like, oh, well, that's why nobody knows who I am, and that's why I'm not building these social relationships, and I don't stand out in anybody's mind, and that's losing me opportunities, and that's actually ultimately hurting my careers in the long term.
By the way, do you wear a uniform when you go to work? When you went to work?
When I was in the Air Force, yes. When I uniform with work, no, there was no.
I'm just gonna give you a
like outside of the Air Force, there was no uniform, so yeah.
Okay, because one thing you could have wore to work was like underneath your uniform, if you had to change, a catchy shirt, like the Power Ranger shirt you're wearing. That somebody's gonna see that and think, "Whoa, you like Power Rangers too?" Sometimes those are the little things. Wear something eye-catching.
Well, okay, so at my previous job, there was actually something like that I should have gotten myself involved in, and I chose not to. And I think that ultimately that worked to my detriment. So, I mean, granted, I'm a computer programmer, so a lot of people in the office, they're already nerds. There's a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
And I've played World of Warcraft, and I was, and there was a large group of people who were in they play Warcraft, and they're in in a guild and all that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, no, I'm bored of Warcraft. I don't play it anymore. Looking at it now, I was like, dude, if I had just joining their guild, switching servers, spending a couple of bucks to transfer characters over to a new server, spending a couple hours a week,
helping them out on quests. They're like, oh, we're keeping him. He helps us with the Warcraft.
Because what I'm finding out, those people, they ended up staying. So their necks never ended up on the chopping block when it came to budgets and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They were in a position where, had I been in their social network, they'd been like, dude, we now have extra spots in the office and all that sort of thing, because they could have reached out and snagged me. So I could have lost a job with one group and then been picked up by a different group.
Oh, yeah.
And that different group was the group of people who were playing WoW and were in a guild together. And I'm had I played the office politics game, I could have been picked up by them.
And another thing I would say, another thing besides donuts, if you want to really win somebody, pizza. Put pizza in the break room. Everybody will love you for that. Believe me, when you're working and you have a very little time for a lunch break, having that big pizza pie in the break room is a godsend for sometimes.
All right.
Believe me, my fiance taught me these techniques, and it works good.
Yeah, those are things that it's not readily apparent why these things are beneficial, and that's my problem. Is despite my criticisms right now of Ebenezer Scrooge, it's like, oh, he's being so short-sighted. In my own personal life, I've been short-sighted on similar things. I've been the Ebenezer Scrooge saying, Fezziwig, why are you doing this? Why are you doing? And I'm like, when it comes to the financial aspects and the like, when it comes to programming and that sort of thing, when it comes to the actual operations of the business, I can look at Ebenezer Scrooge and be like, oh, he's so short-sighted. At least I don't have that problem. When it comes to the social aspects, I am no better than Ebenezer Scrooge when it comes to this particular area.
Yeah.
It's like, when it comes to social interactions between people at a business, I'm the short-sighted one who's like, oh, dude, why do you guys spend your time... why do you guys spend your time doing these team-building exercises on these, because I don't know, because I don't know if they do this at any place you've worked, but they try to do these things, like these group activities where...
when I used to work at Wawa, we had group activities, and I went to a few. Hoagie Day is one of them.
Yeah, they had like some chili cook-off thing, and some, what was the other one? They had like a big, like, a family kind of carnival and all that sort of thing.
Or Pollyanna. For
Pollyanna?
Christmas. Yeah, for Christmas. We had a Pollyanna at Wawa, actually.
I don't know what that means. A Pollyanna.
Basically, you put your names in a hat and you draw it, and whenever name you draw, is that you have to get a gift for that person.
Oh, okay. So it's a Secret Santa thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called a Pollyanna also.
Okay, I've never heard it referred to as a Pollyanna, but yeah, okay, yeah. So there's stuff like that where I should have participated, and I'm like, dude, I'm not gonna take my Saturday and go and spend it at some stupid office carnival thing. Yeah. Had I done that, had I taken the time to do those sorts of things, well, I might still be in Washington right now.
Oh yeah. But now you have me, Fezziwig, in here giving you advice.
All right. Well, it's very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. Unfortunately, I can't really use it use it at the moment, but come January, this is stuff that I'm going to be like, okay, even though it's not something I want to do, it's something I'm going to have to do.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta grease the wheels a bit.
Yeah.
You get the wagon going.
All right. Okay, let's take this. Okay, so there's one thing that's because I talked about last week that we haven't covered.
To something. Sorry, we couldn't have that talk about extraterrestrial life forms and stuff because I've been busy all this while.
Yeah. Well, that's not a problem.
Especially hosting D&D sessions a lot on Sundays.
All right, I guess that's a pretty a good excuse. I was gonna say legitimate. And I'm like, no, that's not right. That's a valid excuse. If I had a D&D group, I would probably. Yeah.
And you have to know another thing. You're right. With the customer's always right. That even includes Cold of Ham. If he ever saw you and he said, "Oh, that product's a piece of shit," yeah, you have to say you're right. It is a piece of shit.
But I gotta agree with Ham on that. You know, I hope I never. That's what. Like, okay, I don't want to have Ham as a customer, so I'm gonna.
If he gives you a good tip for your complaints, then you're like, he may be an asshole, but he tips good.
No, I don't think no, I'm pretty sure I'd be like, you know what? If I have to do business with Ham and he's a customer, I think I'm just gonna quit my job or just let my business crumble. I'm like, yeah, that's a hill worth dying on, right?
Or you could do this: let the newbie take care of him. Let the intern take care of him.
I'm like, no, Ham, keep your money. I don't want. Nah, he can keep his money. I think I'm good. Who cares if the business crumbles? It's worth it.
or throw a new employee there. You take care of him.
Anyway, all right. Okay, so there's one last thing I wanted to because this was kind of the whole reason I started thinking about this particular topic was talking about how businesses are ultimately more benevolent than charity, and because that's part of the story of A Christmas Carol. Is at the start of the story, not only is Ebenezer Scrooge he's a tyrant to his employees, which is bad for business and bad for morale, bad for on numerous levels. He's bad to his customers when they come in asking for extensions on their loans and for them not to foreclose on their house and that sort of thing. And he's
to his family as well.
Yeah, he's bad to his family. And then the other people that come along in the story are people asking for money for a charitable cause.
Yeah, for the workhouses.
Yes. Stuff. They're basically asking for alms for the poor. And so he's terrible to them as well.
Yeah.
Now, it's one of those. This is a thing that Charles Dickens. I don't know if this was on purpose or if he did this intentionally or unintentionally. But what I see there, and what a lot of other people that I've talked to when it comes to these sorts of things, they don't see there is these charities, they rely on businesses like Ebenezer Scrooge's. They cannot exist without them. Without them, people go starving, and the people, like... And yet, the charity is viewed as this ultimate good thing. It's like, oh, yeah, look, they care so much, because it's like... Well, if they cared so much, they probably shouldn't be relying on people like Ebenezer Scrooge. Like, if Ebenezer Scrooge is the ultimate bad guy, why would you want the good guys, the charity, dependent on the ultimate bad guy? That doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever to me. It's like, dude, that tells me that these charities don't actually care about the poor. Because if they did, they wouldn't be relying on investments from dickheads like Ebenezer Scrooge. They would be like, all right, if you want something done right, you do it yourself.
But
right?
I did recall in the book they were going around to all businesses.
Yeah, they were going around to all businesses, but yeah, it was not... I mean, it would be completely foolish of them to just go to Ebenezer Scrooge and hope that he would give them...
Yeah.
But what I'm... point that I'm trying to make here...
And we don't really know after Christmas if they're still doing charity rounds and stuff.
Yeah. So... This is a thing that a lot of economists talk about when it comes to capitalism, that a lot of mainstream art forms have backwards. Because a lot of mainstream art forms, like, and I would say that the Christmas Carol is included in this, typically portray businessman as the evil bad guy who is, doesn't care about other people and is only concerned about themselves. And yeah, that's ultimately Ebenezer Scrooge. And but the thing that they fail to focus on is, despite his personality flaws, Ebenezer Scrooge is still doing good with his business.
Yeah.
And he is doing, like at the start of the book, he is doing more good for the people of his community than that charity is. And yet people look at that charity as like, oh, those are good people and they care about other... I'm like, Ebenezer Scrooge has multiple people on his books that he helped fund their businesses. He helped give them houses. He helped their family get through financially hard times.
Yeah.
That's what money lending is. Money lending is it's how businesses get started in the first place. It's how people buy their homes. It's how people pay for groceries when they lose their job.
Yeah.
Loans and all that sort of thing. Now, granted, in order to keep doing that, he can't just simply give the money away. Now, the charity, that's what they do. They get money, they give it away, they're out of money, they have no more money to give away. They have to go and beg for more money to give away.
But it also boils down to reputation. If people on the street see Scrooge, a financially successful businessman, turn away a charitable organization, it's going to paint a bad light on Scrooge a lot.
Yes. Yeah, so that, but ultimately Scrooge isn't concerned with that. He's not concerned with his reputation. He's, right? In the story, he's not concerned about that. That's not something that he is actively trying to build his reputation. He should be. Yeah. Which is something he ultimately learns, but he's not concerned with it at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, because in that aspect of the charity, him turning away, it's like, I could put up something really good that happened with Target. Target doesn't get a lot of business, unlike Walmart, because Target turned away Toys for Tots and the Salvation Army, the people that ring in the bell.
Really?
Yeah.
Target said they can't do that? Yeah, that seems odd.
Yeah, because Target's from France, actually.
Oh. Yeah, that's ultimately bad for their business aesthetics, right? That makes them look like bad. Yeah.
And a lot of people went from Target, from people that shopped at Target, now shop at Walmart. because Walmart do allow toy for tots and Salvation Army. Because of that, Target's hemorrhaging customers and profit a lot. Now with Scrooge, with him turned away to charity, and let's say Fezziwig's business is still around, Fezziwig's ex loves giving money to charity.
Yes.
A lot of people are going to go to Fezziwig more because he's more charitable with his wealth. The wealth he received, he gives back, and that money keeps recycling. That's the one thing Scrooge didn't know about money. It recycles.
Well, yeah. So when it comes to giving to charity, yes. Now, but when it comes to so it is. So I get what you're saying, but that's a separate
entity.
Yeah, that's a separate aspect of the business, because that's going more towards the reputation for the business and the likelihood of people of shopping or coming to his business when they need a loan. They're like, okay, well, because if he's got a reputation of giving away profits to charity, that's ultimately going to help his business, because people are like, they're going to say, oh, Ebenezer Scrooge is a good man, and
yeah, it's
even
like this.
Even if I could earn more money with a different company, I'd rather give it to Ebenezer Scrooge's business, because when he has profits, he gives it back to the community.
Yeah,
and they'd rather have their money going towards that. Yeah.
Hey, Scrooge may be a dick, but he gives money to kids who are suffering cancer.
Yes. So they would even if he maintained everything else that he did, if he had a reputation of giving to charity, that would ultimately help improve his business in the long run. But that's the reputation aspect of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so but what the point that I'm trying to get to is, people have this mindset, and granted, this can be worked to the benefit of a business, because people have the mindset, charity good, business bad.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that I cannot wrap my mind around, why people have that particular perspective, because that's what I'm saying. It's like, Ebenezer Scrooge's business is the reason people in that story have a home to begin with, and this is something Bob Cratchit mentions. Is like, so when like, as we talked about this a little, it's like Bob Cratchit's family has nothing but venom and bile for Ebenezer Scrooge, because of, because he's ultimately he's not a good guy, he's a bad guy, right?
He's a dick.
But Bob Cratchit says, and rightfully so, he's the reason we have food at all.
Yeah.
He's the reason we can have a Christmas dinner. He's the reason we have everything that we have in our house at the moment. Without him, everybody starves in that family. And that's something that is overlooked by people when they criticize capitalism. Like, oh, capitalism, look, Ebenezer Scrooge is this evil capitalist, and he's exploiting Bob Cratchit, and he's exploiting his workers, and he's not giving to charity. And I'm like, without him in this story, Bob Cratchit, Tiny Tim, and that entire family starved to death.
Yeah.
Tiny
Tim would have been gone from the get-go.
Yeah, they would have been dead long ago. Granted, Ebenezer Scrooge isn't doing everything he ultimately could do. Like, he could always do more than what he's doing, right? That's because that's what's related to at the end of the story, when he's like, okay, now you're understanding the balance a little bit better. Although, like as I said at the start of this stream, Ebenezer Scrooge, I think, ultimately goes too far the other direction.
Yeah.
I think he's making decisions towards the end of the book. They're like, okay, that's going to have long-term negative repercussions. But for the sake of the story, the story's not about how to run a successful business. It's about it's ultimately about Christmas and
the spirit
being
of
a better person, all that sort of thing. Yes, that
Mhm.
that's not a point that I'm trying to
Oh yeah.
negate or anything like that. Like I said, it's a classic, and it's a classic for a reason because it
Oh
speaks
yes, I
to
watch it every year. Actually,
Yeah.
I watch different versions of it, like Scrooge, the Bill Murray version, the Muppets
Yeah.
version is one of my favorites.
But it is a classic because it speaks a universal truth, and this is that is anything that is a classic specifically because it resonates with people along a fundamental level.
Yeah.
And so there's fundamental principles in A Christmas Carol that
I could say that the whole thing that you're aspecting is like the whole business thing that you're thinking of. It's like
Yeah,
from Donald Trump to Ben and Jerry's at this point, because Ben and Jerry's
Yeah.
give a lot to charity.
Okay. Yes. So yeah. That's a excellent example because if rather than compare a business to a charity, comparing two businesses to each other.
Yeah.
Now, Donald Trump's business is not really known for giving money to charity. I mean, I guess he has done charity because he's done when he was on the campaign trail, he did charity for veterans and things along those lines. But Ben and Jerry's has made it their business model to focus purely on, hey, we give to charity and we are fighting for these causes and we've got that pecan resist. Yeah.
Orange Man Bad Ice Cream, we'll call it.
Yeah, Orange Man Bad Ice Cream. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And they're like, we don't care if we lose money by doing this. So it's for the good cause. And I'm like, yeah. So
and a lot of socialists don't even know that they're not. They won't even label them as capitalists because hey, they donate to our causes. If we call them capitalists, we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot majorly.
Yeah. So. Oh. Okay. So when comparing those two businesses, I would actually say Trump's organization, even if they didn't give anything to charity, and even if they kept themselves completely out of politics, would be doing more than Ben and Jerry's when Ben and Jerry's is grandstanding and virtue signaling.
Yeah.
Because again, whenever you're talking about a business and what the ultimate good that it does, you have to think the overall impact that business has. How many people that business interacts with. How many people that business changes. How many people have had their lives changed by that business. And so one example that I bring up a lot when we're talking about this particular aspect of business is Microsoft. Now, when people think about Microsoft and when they think about the good that Microsoft has done for the world, a lot of people focus on Bill Gates' charity that he started after his business was successful, after he became a billionaire, and after he stepped down as CEO of Microsoft.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm like, no, that's not how it works. He was already, had he never done anything charity-wise as far as the Bill Gates Foundation, had he just ran ran Microsoft the way that way until the day he died, he would still have done more good for the world than every other charity combined.
Yeah.
And the way, because I've talked about this particular aspect on previous streams, simply because he has saved millions and billions and possibly even trillions, I don't know exactly how many, hours of people's labor. Windows is not perfect. It's not even a good program when you're talking about based on, like, Windows overall. Like, Linux beats Windows on every aspect. It doesn't matter. Microsoft did more good for the world with Windows than they have with all of Bill Gates' combined charity, combined with United Way, combined with any other. What Microsoft did is they have saved humanity hundreds of thousands. It's the amount of time saved in manual labor due to the popularity of the Windows program and making PCs a household thing and a small business thing. Just that capability alone that has done more good for humanity, because so not only is it saving of man hours and saving of labor, right? Computers ultimately are a labor saving device. They save doing everything by hand you're talking about entire lifetimes have been of productivity have been condensed to days. When you're like, it's that much of an improvement in how fast we can do things. And then the very fact that because of Windows and because of what they were able to do in the personal computer market, that's the only reason we have the internet, where we can start talking about it today. Like, the impact of that single business on the world, it's almost impossible to quantify, because we don't know what would have happened without them. We don't know where mankind would be without that contribution.
Yeah.
It is. Well, yeah, it's really.
Yeah,
and yet the amount of impact and positive impact, I should say, that has had on the world, it's staggering when you start breaking it down.
And Scrooge was not that much financially intelligent, because if he donated to charity, he would have got a tax deduction.
Odds are, back in the day, not really.
Yeah.
Like, under our current system, yes. Under the system that Charles Dickens found himself in, probably not.
Yeah.
But when people think about doing good for the world, they mostly focus on helping people in need, helping people who cannot help themselves.
Oh yeah.
And that is it's a flawed perspective, to say the least. To say doing good for someone means helping them without seeking anything in return.
Yeah.
That's a flawed perspective, and that is the ultimate perspective of people when they start to spout communism. They're like, oh, well, right? From each according to their ability, to each according to their need, as if need is the ultimate, like, hey, if you can supply somebody's need and you do it without getting anything in return, that's the ultimate good you can do for other people. And I'm like,
yeah,
that's not a perspective that I can.
Yeah,
I mean,
and also,
not only do I disagree with it on a moral level, but I disagree with it
I disagree with a lot of views of communism, and because let's say you help somebody's going to take advantage of that eventually. Mm-hmm. They're going to say, oh, I need help with this. Oh, I need help with that. The whole philosophy of fish for
teach a man to, or give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. That's the difference between business and charity.
Yeah.
Charity is giving a man a fish. Business is teaching a man to fish.
Yeah. And it's feed him for a lifetime or feed a village.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where most socialists get it wrong. They go by the philosophy, it will feed a village. But at the same time, that guy the only guy who knows how to fish can actually become a capitalist in there by that aspect.
Yeah, because he's got it, and so that's one area where it's, again, going back to people being short-sighted. When you're talking about the teach a man to fish, they don't look at that long term of, okay, he now has the ability to fish for himself, and not only can he provide for himself, he has a way of providing for others. Yeah. It's turning what, so at the start of the story, that man who didn't have anything to eat is a detriment to society. The giving him a fish puts him at neutral. Teaching him how to fish puts him in the positive. He's now getting a surplus, and that is the difference between those three stages. So charity brings people to neutral.
Yeah.
Charity does not put people at a surplus. Businesses put people at a surplus.
Yeah.
Charities put people who are in the negative to a neutral.
Yeah, and that
businesses
neutral,
take people that are in the negative and put them into a positive, or take people who are at neutral and put them in a positive, or people who are at positive and even further in the positive. That's
and that neutral, that let's say that person with the charity, that neutral would actually give that guy a opportunity to work for Scrooge in a sense, because he's like, oh, now I'm at a financially stable. Now I think I can get a job. Oh, look, this accounting house is open. It needs a new employee. Maybe I'll go there and make a Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes that's the other aspect with charity.
I think. Well, okay. So that's. I think that is what you're describing there is actually. It's not quite the broken window fallacy, but it's along the same lines. Is you're seeing the good of one action, but that's ignoring the good. That's ignoring other goods that could have come about from so when you're talking about he giving to charity, it puts that person who received the charity at neutral and puts them in a position where they're like, okay, well, now I can actually go out and seek a job. But imagine, on the other hand, that rather than Scrooge giving that money to charity, he took that money and invested it into something else.
Yeah.
The
fallacy I committed was slippery slope.
Yeah. I don't know if it quite falls under a slippery slope, but I'm saying, imagine Ebenezer Scrooge took that same amount of money and invested it into something else.
Yeah.
Like, say, invested it in some business, or rather than helping that charity. Now, that business would be helped out, and then a customer for that business would be helped out. So rather than helping one person get out of a detriment and come to neutral and then get a job, that same amount of money could be helping two people, helping a new business and helping the customer for that new business. And so if you focus on, that one person was helped by charity and then ultimately got a job, that's a good thing. And you're like, wait a minute. But had he spent that money otherwise, there would have been two people that would be better off as opposed to just one person that's better off. And that's just, and ignoring those two people and that possibility and just focusing on the one, that's a problem that a lot of socialists, they fall into. They're like, but look at all the good that communism does. Look at all these people who are being educated. And I'm like, but look at but you're ignoring the other benefits that may have ultimately been more long-term beneficial than sinking money into healthcare and education. That's
the whole needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Or that's not
not quite, because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I think is ultimately a harmful perspective.
Yeah, but in that aspect, the whole financial and other businesses, which will help many, outweigh that one person. That's how I'm going it by that perspective.
So, but because usually that phrase is used to,
I'm just using it in Spock's term.
Well,
his life when he sacrificed himself on the Enterprise, to save the whole crew. He said the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah. And for self-sacrifice, that is fine, but oftentimes the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few is used not for self-sacrifice or justification for self-sacrifice, but for some reason justification of the sacrifice of other people.
Yeah, the whole nefarious aspect.
Yeah, you're like, it's often used, it's more often than not used for...
Oh, yes, that village that we were defending, we had to bomb it to kill all those soldiers and all the innocent people there, but hey, we at least save our country.
Okay, yeah, that's actually a good way of putting it, because you're like, oh well, we may have killed all of these civilians by drone strikes and all that, but we got the terrorists, so it's okay. No, that's the the needs of the many, being the needs of the U.S. population, outweigh the needs of the civilians
Yeah.
who were innocently bombed.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I never. One thing
so,
I never got. I'm gonna be honest. I never really got charity myself. It's like you help a few out of that whole charity. You have only a few people that got helped in an aspect from these big charity drives instead of helping everybody.
yeah, and that's ultimately the point I'm talking about. So I'm saying.
Yeah.
Charities, while I think they are a good thing,
They're a good idea on paper, as I always say.
they're a good thing. They are not the best thing.
Their intent is for the good.
Yes, so they do. I would rather have charities than have government support systems, right? If you're gonna, like, the government support is you have to give money to X organization, and it's taking money from some people to give to other people. Like, I'd rather have charities where it's like, okay, I want to give my money to this person to help them out in a time of need. That is good, but
at sometimes I had to agree to disagree on that because I am on welfare actually because of my disability.
No, I understand that, but if the government wasn't providing that, you would probably get more of a benefit or get the same amount of benefit, plus they'd be able to help someone else on that same amount of money. So I think the government provided support systems are not as good as what charity could do in its place. And that's economists have delved into that. And for every $4 spent on government aid, only one of those dollars actually goes to the beneficiary.
Oh, believe me,
it's ridiculous. It's like 24%, and depending on what, I think that's just overall when it comes to government spending, 75% of every dollar usually goes towards administration fees and bureaucracy rather than to the actual cause itself, and that actually might be higher or lower depending on a particular aspect.
I may be on SSDI, but I can also say it's a flawed system itself because it's mostly to get more money from food stamps and Social Security. It's how many kids that you can pop out of you.
Yeah, and when it comes to charity, charities overall have a I think the average for charities is 40%. So 40% of every dollar given to charity goes directly to the people you're trying to help. So I mean, granted, that's not great. And again, this is talking about the average. So the average for all of government programs is 1/4 of every dollar goes to the actual individual in need. Charity, it is 40%. So that's a difference of 15%. Granted, there are some charities where it's 80% to 90%, and what offsets that is the charities where it's like 10%. So the average is 40%, but there's some that do more than others.
Susan G. going that rip off.
Or like Bono's One, where 1% of their donations actually go to the people they are claimed to help. Or the Clinton Foundation, where it's something like 0%.
Like the cost of how would you get a half a penny? How would you divide? It's like how much goes to charity? If there's any way you can cut a penny in half, that goes to charity. It's a joke.
I'm not familiar with that. I didn't.
With the Clinton Foundation, it's like.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like how you can mathematically divide a penny. That's how much goes to charity.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I thought you were. Yeah. Okay. I get you.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. So when it comes to government benefits and safety nets and all that sort of thing, I think those by every metric that I know of, they are woefully inadequate compared to a actual charity that could supply that could be benefiting those same people.
Yeah.
Like, so if the government wasn't doing what they're doing as far as your situation where you're receiving benefits for disability, if that didn't exist on a government level and a charity had to provide that, that charity would ultimately either be helping you more than what the government's helping you right now, or they would be helping more people than what the government is helping right now, based on the same amount of financial input. That's just purely looking at the numbers of the raw statistics.
But also, you have to take in account another variable that I will say is whatever happens if the charity runs out.
Yeah, that's the aspect that I'm getting to when I'm saying ultimately businesses are more benevolent than charities.
Oh, yeah.
Because charities rely on financial input outside of their system. Charities themselves require charity.
Oh, yes.
And that is kind of a weird thing people don't think about. Yeah.
Or when they get the problem done, what's there to go around asking for in the long run? Like, for instance, there's charity drives to help cure cancer. What happens to that charity drive when we finally cure cancer?
Well, as far as I know, for that particular charity,
they are SLL.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
It's kind of it's a little bit of a catch-22 in that they.
Yeah.
I wonder how dedicated they are to actually finding a cure, because if they find a cure, then what should happen is, yay, hey, we found a cure, we fixed this problem, let's move on to the next major problem.
Yeah.
But more likely than not, they're like, oh, well, we can't actually cure this thing because then we're all out of a job and we have nothing to switch to. Right. So let's just keep perpetuating this.
Yeah, and that's the one thing about business over charity. Like, the one thing about charity is most of the time charity is like helping find cures for certain diseases, helping to financial help support the poor. What happens if all the poor are now with this charity? They're no longer poor. The charity's out of luck.
The odds of that happening are pretty unlikely because
But I could see that whole aspect of you with the business and charity aspect.
Now, you could fall into that same trap with a business because you're like, well, if your entire business is dependent on curing cancer, that's your business model, well, then you need people with cancer in order to keep selling your cancer cure too.
Yeah.
But, so so I don't think that's something that can be solved by either charity or business ultimately.
Especially
I think both will still have a problem. Now, I do know when it comes to government, for some reason, whether the problem is actually being addressed or not, they still just dump money into it.
Right.
Even if it's detrimental to their ultimate aim, money still keeps jumping into it. Now, if charities operated at the same level as government, then those charities would cease to exist. Like, if you have we're fighting to cure cancer, and you have a charity, and what you see because of the direct results of that charity is that there's more people getting cancer, that charity would stop getting money. But for some reason, government is like, okay, we're here to end poverty. And then you're like, okay, out of a 20, 30-year history, we now have more poverty than when we started. Let's throw more money at that. What? That's... like, if you had a charity that was trying to cure cancer, and 20 years later there's more cancer than when the charity started.
With government, we're not donating to the poor. We're the big guys. We're just giving a tax. It's just the taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah, so that's a problem there. So if you had a business that was was curing cancer, and you're like, oh, well, that business is actually causing cancer. Well, that business would disappear. Government can cause all the cancer at once and can increase the amount of poor all at once, and it still gets infinite money pumped into it.
or the worst of the worst with that business, they have the cure for cancer, and the person still has cancer. Like, why can't I be cured of my cancer? The cure is only for stage 1.
Yeah. Okay. So that I don't think business or charity actually has an upper hand when it comes to curing or solving a problem. I think both of them have an incentive to keep doing what they're doing. Yeah. Now, provided that there is so let's say there's a charity involved in trying to find a cure for cancer, and there's a business involved in finding a cure for cancer. Charity finds a cure for cancer. Well, people stop giving that charity money. There's no reason to keep giving money to a charity that's designed to cure cancer if they find a cure. Business, on the other hand, if the business is involved in trying to cure cancer and people were giving them money, and hey, that business found a cure for cancer and now cancer is no longer a problem. Well, it doesn't matter if people stop giving money to that business, because that business has money.
Yeah.
From when it was running as a successful business. And they can, so now they're in a position where they're like, oh, we cured cancer. Well, let's take our same capabilities and our financial capital that we have built up, and let's solve problem number 2.
World hunger.
Charity, on the other hand, will run out of money. And once cancer is cured, no new money is coming into charity, or to that particular charity, and they can't transition to solving problem number 2.
And let's say problem number 2, unless problem number 2 is the price of that cure, then charity will still be around to help finance people to get that cure.
Charity as a whole will still be around, but that particular charity, like, let's say, charity number 1 is, hey, they cured cancer. Well, charity number 1 is going to stop receiving funding. And what funding they have left over after finding that cure, more than likely will not be enough for them to transition to doing anything else. So, whereas a business, because a business generates profits, is going to have profits that they can start like, okay, we've got profits, we've grown our business, hey, we found a cure for cancer, we're selling that cure or whatever, we're taking profits, okay, at least they will have the foresight to be like, we can't sustain this for forever. Let's take some of our profits and let's start researching other cures. And this is actually something businesses this is not speculative. This is something businesses do. Once they have a successful drug that helps alleviate symptoms for something, well, then they take their profits and they start researching newer drugs. Oh, yeah. So they're not focused on just, hey guys, we solved the insulin problem. We've got a cheap way to provide you guys insulin. We're done. That's all we do from here on. No, they're like, okay, what's the next issue to tackle? Whereas charities, more often than not, are single focus, and that's all. And since they never actually achieve or improve a process, that's the thing that people are more often than not overlook is. Charities rarely improve how something is done.
Yeah, like for instance, business will have the patent for that cure for cancer, but they'll do a better research to find a faster, better cure for cancer.
Yeah,
that's another way you can look at that aspect.
Yeah. They will like, hey, how can we provide this cheaper? How can we provide this faster? How can we provide better? Charities have a history of like, we need to help more, right? We're helping 100,000 people with our particular charity. We get more money. Well, now we're helping 100,001 people.
Yeah.
Okay. It just keeps expanding their customer base, or the amount of people they help. But it's like, what is being done to offer a better service to those 101,000 people, or to offer it faster or cheaper. So when it comes to charity, that seems to be anytime there's extra money, that extra money goes out. It doesn't go to improving the process. It doesn't go to, simplifying the needs of administration. It doesn't. It goes to, money goes in and then it immediately goes out to new people, because there's always more people that need help.
Oh yeah.
And that's their main purpose as a company or as a charity, is to help more and more people, or to help as many people as possible.
Yeah.
But in that process, that changes their incentive, because the incentive is not to improve how that charity is giving people money. It's just, how can we give more people money? It's not are we giving people money in the most efficient way possible? That's kind of a secondary thing for a charity. But that is a primary driver for a business. How can we reduce our cost for providing people X? Yeah. With a charity, it's how can we provide more people with X, not how can we reduce our cost of providing people X. That it's really bizarre that would be the case, and I'm trying to, and I know charities do have somewhat of it, or do have that incentive, because they're trying to help as many people as possible, right? And in trying to help as many people as possible, they're trying to cut down on their own costs, so that way they can give more money to other people, right? So they can give more help.
Yeah.
But given history and historical examples, that's not typically how charities operate. I mean, charities very rarely improve how they provide charity.
I can say one good thing about this is how I view it. In my state, we have the lottery, and it says, proceeds of benefit older Pennsylvanians. I'm like, that's not really good, actually, because in a sense, people are going to buy lottery tickets no matter what. But at the same time, how is it benefiting older Pennsylvanians, where I go to and when I hear on the news that another person in a senior citizens home is getting abused?
Well, the other thing is, it's going to help elderly at the expense of the people who are buying those tickets. Because the vast majority of the people buying tickets don't win anything, and they lose money.
Yeah.
And so helping one person at the detriment of another. So that is okay. That brings, and I think we're gonna wrap up on this point here, because I've been doing a Rubik's 4x4 cube. I don't know if you've heard that.
Awesome.
I'm sure you've heard that in the background.
I love that Rubik's cube.
I started. So granted, I should have showed this on camera. I started with a completely mixed cube, and now I am on the final stage. And wouldn't you know, I was hoping to have this solved by the end of this, but I have 2 parity errors, not just 1 parity error. Dang it! I got corners and a side. That's like the worst possible thing.
That I can do that, actually, a Rubik's cube, but my brother cannot do it. He'll have to peel off the stickers and just put them all together. I'm like,
okay,
that's how you do it.
So 3x3 does not have parity errors. 4x4 does. I've done 3x3s, 4x4, and 5x5s. 4x4 to me is the hardest of those. Because it has this stupid side parity thing. Like, the corners are easy to fix. This right here, 50% of the time, I screw up the whole thing trying to solve that one last edge.
So try the 6x6.
Oh, I haven't tried a 6x6 yet. That's... I imagine that has more parity error possibilities than the 4x4. The 5x5 actually has less.
Yeah.
Which is
the one I know that has a lot of parity errors is the octa ones.
Yeah. It's even numbered sides, or even numbered those have more issues with this sort of thing. Yeah. Because like for the 5x5, I can easily fix a side and it all makes, I mean, I don't have to memorize algorithms and stuff like that. I can figure it out. But for some reason, the 4x4, when I get this error where all the other edges are fine except for one edge, I cannot think enough moves ahead to figure out how to solve that. I have to memorize a pattern to fix that. Anyway.
With the even ones, the odds are against you more likely.
That's a good way to put it. Anyway, I was hoping to have that solved, but with double parity error, not likely. Anyway, so the last point we wanted to talk about, because you brought this up, was oh, dang it. I started talking about the Rubik's Cube and lost that train of thought. Okay, so with charity, one person loses so that way somebody else can gain.
Yeah.
The person giving money to the charity loses and sees nothing back other than a good sense of a good feeling about themselves, and then that money goes to the beneficiary.
Mm-hmm.
With business, everybody, more often than not, everybody wins. So granted, there's business models where somebody loses, but more often than not, everybody walks away with more than they came into that arrangement. And this is the way economists have phrased this, is trade is made of win. Because when you're dealing with charity, one person is giving something to the charity, and the charity is giving something to someone else. Business, everybody is trading equally. They're trading equally in the sense that I give you my money for a product that I want more than my money, and the business is trading a product for money, and they want money more than that product. So it's equal in value, but so I guess everybody's trading equally in that nobody walks away with less than they started with. But they both win because they both end up with something that they wanted more than what they had. That's why they say trade is made of win, because if they didn't want whatever more than what they had, they wouldn't have started the trade to begin with. Like, if I don't want a candy bar more than I want my dollar, I don't put my dollar in the machine.
Yeah.
If the seller of said candy bar doesn't care about my dollar and would rather have a candy bar, well, then they don't put the candy bar in the machine. So it's this weird, anytime somebody exchanges money for a thing, they want that thing more than they want money. And anytime somebody sells a thing for money, they rather have that money than the thing that they have.
It's sort of a paradox in a way. Or anomaly.
I don't know if it's necessarily a paradox or an anomaly, but it's okay. So it's counterintuitive. I think that's a better way of.
Yeah.
So it's counterintuitive, and a lot of people who haven't thought this stuff through, they're like, they view all trade as zero sum. Now, when it comes to charity, it's a zero sum.
Oh yeah.
So if I give $1 to charity, $1 spent by that charity to go to recipient of that $1.
Mm-hmm.
The equation doesn't. It zeroes out.
Mm-hmm.
Because you started off with, so you've got a -1 on one side and a +1 on the other. Zero.
Yeah.
With a trade in business, I take my dollar, I give it to business, the business gives me a product in return. We both have more than what we started with. So rather than it being a zero sum, it's actually a positive sum, which you're like, wait a minute. That nothing like this. There's still the same amount of things on both sides of the equation, but both sides after the trade are better off than when they started. Okay. That's something that is different from the way a charity operates.
What?
Coconut oil does that?
Oh, yes, it does. Sorry, but my fiance came in and she seeing my hair because I used coconut oil finally.
Okay.
Yeah, she just came in. We were talking about charity, actually. And do you think you could give some aspects on it, honey?
I'm not sure. I don't know, because I'm not sure what part I jumped in.
Oh, we're talking about how business is somewhat better than charity. Because business, in a sense, how would you say it, Humane, again? How would you say how business is always better than charity? How you brought that point up?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I was able to summarize it easily, but I'm saying we went over several points, but what I'm saying right now is that trade is made of win in that both parties walk away with more than what they started. But with charity, one person is going to walk away with less, and one person is going to walk away with more.
That is a point.
Yeah, that is a great point.
And then to top it off, both sides are kind of building off of each other to create more.
Yeah. And so because people are trading a specific amount of something, which I say it's an equal amount, right? Because if I'm charging $1 for a candy bar and somebody has $1, well, yeah, we're trading equally across. But what the candy bar company can do with that $1 is they can turn that $1 into $2. Me, as a consumer of candy bars, I cannot take that $1 and turn it into 2 candy bars. The candy bar manufacturer is like, oh, I want that $1 because I can take that $1 and I can turn that into 2 candy bars. Me as a consumer, I'm like, well, unless something's on special or whatever, I can't take $1 and turn it into 2 candy bars. Every time I exchange $1, I get 1 candy bar in return.
Oh yeah.
Business is like, okay, every time I get $1, I take that and I turn it into $2. I mean, granted, these are not exact yet. Anyway, but person with $1 is like, I can exchange $1. Well, I'm going to say, well, instead of saying candy bar, because that seems, I can take $1 and I can turn that into a power bar, right? So I'm going to make it a little healthier, right? Oh, yeah. So I take my $1, I give it to a business like Laura Bar. Laura takes that $1, turns it into 2 Laura Bars. Okay. But me, I take that $1, I can only ever purchase 1 Laura Bar for $1. I can't turn $1 into 2 Laura Bars, but what I can do is I can take that Laura Bar and I can turn that into $2. Right? If you get, right, this is the cycle of what's going on, although it's not always expressly stated like this, is the reason I'm trading my $1 for whatever I'm purchasing is because I know I can get more use out of whatever I'm purchasing. And the reason someone is willing to sell something is because they can get more use out of what they sell, or what they get in exchange for a sale, than they could with what they currently have. So in both situations, the people are better off, not because of what they get in return, but because of what they can turn what they got into. So,
point.
Well, you sold brownies, so you would.
I sold brownies.
Yeah.
Years before. Yeah. So you see, back when I was in high school, at first I had this mentor, right? Mm-hmm. And my mentor, she saw where I was coming from. She saw what kind of situations I was living in, and she did not want me to repeat that later on in my adult life. So she set me up with a banking account, and she had me learn to trade. Mm-hmm. So that being said, when my mom put me on punishment and stopped me from going over to see her anymore because she thought that I was listening to my mentor more than I was listening to her, it became one of those things where I was then broke because I did not have any money coming in because my mentor was helping me out with getting like some odd jobs here and there. So come my junior year of high school, my mom could not, I was inside a debate team. I had to worry about my junior prom and this, that, and the other. So I'm saying to myself, I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, what is it that I can do to bring in some money for myself? Because nobody is buying my mom's crochet purses, even though they're cute and all, but nobody wants them for some reason. And, you know, this and the other. I'm thinking to myself, I can bake.
Okay.
So began my brownie business. With a few bucks I had to my name, I went over to the grocery store, got myself some brownie mix, some eggs, and some oil. made my brownies.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them had frosting on them. Some of them had M&Ms in them. Some of them were plain. I took it to some friends that I trusted. I said, I'm experimenting with something. Do you mind if you try these? And then they were like, sure. And they ate them. And they're like, wow, this is really good. What did you do to these brownies? I said, none. I just make brownies. Hey, so a hypothetical question. Would you buy these if I started selling them? And they were like, sure. So I started buying more mix, more oil, more eggs. And every night after I was done my homework, it was basically a little brownie factory in my house.
Yeah.
It-
And the reason you were doing this is because they were happy that they were getting brownies, right? And you were happy because you were turning brownies into brownies plus dollars or plus more money than when you started.
Yeah, so it was kind of like I kind of got down the basically the algebra of profit versus product, you know? Because it's kind of like, okay, so I know that the brownie mix, the eggs, and the oil cost this much, and I can make this many with those brownies.
Yeah.
And I know that some product will be left over after I'm done with this batch, which means that I get to profit off of what I don't have to buy.
Yes. So the surplus that, the Karl Marx enthusiast would would say that you have stole from your customers, that's actually making it so that you can provide more to more customers. But it's also, you are getting more than what you started off with, which is the entire purpose of starting your brownie business. Because if it was a zero-sum game, right, then you would have bought brownies, this is something that the communists, for some reason, they're terrible at math, and this is one of the things that they're overlooking, is because they view it as a zero-sum game, there is no way for you to ever have more than what you started with. Which means as soon as you've spent whatever, and then you've consumed whatever, you now have nothing. You're like, okay, I spent $1, I bought brownie mix, I sold the brownie mix for whatever, for the exact cost of what I spent. I gained nothing out of this situation, and in fact, now I have less than what I started with, because not only do I have the same amount as what I started with, but I lost all the energy and time that I used in making brownies. And so you'd actually be worse off, and that's something that communists don't understand is, how dare you sell that for more than what you paid for it? I'm like, that's the entire purpose. Because it means that not only will you have more than what you started with, it allows you to keep doing that process, but it also allows you to provide for yourself while doing that process. And that was the entire purpose of what you're saying. You started this brownie business so that way you could actually pay your bills I'm not sure how successful it was, if it was enough to pay your bills, but at least
it was successful.
Yeah, at least you were making money so that way you could keep making the brownies, and you'd have money to spend on whatever else you were spending it on, in addition to the brownies. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. That's one thing that people overlook, because if you look at a charity's financial records, they don't have that going for them. Every dollar coming in goes out.
Or they'll keep it for themselves.
Or it stays on the records until it goes out. It doesn't keep circulating back into the system, and it doesn't produce more than that. That $1 will never become $2 under what the charity is currently doing.
Yeah.
A business can take that $1 and then, through the process of what the business does, turn that into $2, and now they have $2 to spend, and then it'll become $4, and it'll just keep going through this process. A charity will never see that on their books. Okay, so this is something like, if you go through and you look at audit records for various charities, you will never see a charity that has increased exponentially what it can do or what it has done. Okay, so let's say I guess maybe not never, because there's some of these charities, they get celebrity endorsement or whatever, and then they see a massive influx in funds and all that sort of thing.
We could bring a good one on that one, Autism Speaks.
Yeah.
With the whole thing with Dee Snider in it.
Yeah.
The commercial. That they got an influx of a lot of money towards that.
Yeah.
And the way they treat autism like it's a disease, that's another way they've done it with their shady business practice.
Yeah, so I guess maybe that's a case where a charity was able to exponentially increase its the amount of money flowing through it.
That's another thing charity can do also, fearmonger.
Yeah, a business can't do that, can it?
Yeah. A charity could fearmonger. Or make something that's very little into something very big.
Case in point, and that's only because I worked as a canvasser, the ACLU. Because I wouldn't say they fearmonger.
Oh, I would.
Yeah.
But at the same,
they didn't used to. I would say they've got a history of not doing that, but currently, yeah, they do that.
Yeah, because I remember distinctly when I went to ACLU. It's kind of like, do you believe in gay? Do you believe in gay rights? Do you support the choice of abortion? This, that, and the other. And we're trying to like lure the person in so that way they can sign up for a monthly subscription. So that way, hey, the ACLU gets that charity going.
Even you had to say, oh, would you help the left defeat Trump in office?
That too. That would be the most fear mongering that I would believe that the ACLU did, because again, I worked for them, so I had to say that. Are you against Trump?
Yeah, that's why I think you were good with the charity aspect, because you actually work charity.
Yeah.
And the charity has that benefit, that thing that always they have an edge over business. A business can't fearmonger or make something so trivial into something so big. With charity, they can do that.
All right.
So in a sense, in the Christmas Carol, the charity, they made it so big, like with these people being poor. Even when Scrooge said no, he's like, the guy even used a coercion tactic of saying, what about the people in the workhouses? What about the poor? And Scrooge even rebuttal like, then better them to go there than decrease the surplus population.
Yeah. And
or even better, like how in the movie Scrooged with Bill Murray in it, where he was basically scared into helping out the homeless.
Yeah.
Because the Ghost of Christmas Present showed him one of the homeless people who he met inside the homeless shelter, and see that he froze to death.
Yeah.
And then don't forget to mention the Ghost of Christmas Future showing him that he was going to get cremated, and then he got the vision of him burning alive.
Yeah.
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 Pretty underhanded scaremongering tactics there.
Yeah, that's the one thing charity has up their sleeve. They had that best thing ever, fear-mongering.
Yeah, imagine if a business tried that. Well, you better buy Adidas or else. or else all of these people are going to die.
Oh, yeah.
Like
you don't buy Adidas, our employees are going to freeze to death. Then why don't you pay them?
If you don't buy Nike, Colin Kaepernick is going to go to every American flag and piss on it.
No, he's probably going to do that whether you give Nike money or not. All right.
Or better yet, this is the better one. Buy from Nike, or Colin Kaepernick's going to stand during the national anthem.
Yeah. Oh no, can't have that. He's got to kneel. All right. Well, I was trying to do too many things at once, and I'm close.
Yeah, you are close. You're doing good, actually.
I got that last parody, and I'm like, that's the hard one.
Yeah, remember my whole thing when you get that job? Get them donuts or pizza in the break room. That will help you out in office politics immensely.
Yeah, well,
they will never fire a guy who gives donuts. Ain't that right, hon?
Yeah. So I have never played the party politics or the office politics game, and that's something I'm like, well, I say that I'm opposed to it, and all. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why. It's pointless, and like, well, and even if it's pointless to me, I can definitely see the benefit of what other people who do play that the office politics game. So to deny that would be pretty hypocritical of me. Like, okay, whether you understand why it is or whether you agree with why it is, to reject that it is there is an
and the best type
it's
of
an
donuts,
unwise thing to do. Like,
and I'll tell you the best type of donuts to get. Get the box with the 4 different flavors: powdered sugar, cinnamon powdered sugar, plain, and chocolate. Especially if you have females in the office area.
Okay. You're just talking about the Hostess donut thingy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're in this is gonna be funny because I'm gonna say something that's a little off cuff. If it's around the fall time, if you're still working there, get pumpkin spice because white women love pumpkin spice.
Okay.
Okay, I have to get going now. I have dinner to make.
Well.
All right.
So close. I'm so close to that, but
so close, but no cigar.
Well, but this is the point where I try to fix this, and the entire cube gets messed up. It's always that. It's always that. When this happens, like if it's the corners that are off, I can fix that usually most times, and then when the edge, it's too many steps. Like I can't quite wrap my brain around it. Anyway, I usually have to go to a video where there's a walkthrough for that last edge. Anyway.
And thank you for letting me be a part of your stream, HUMANe.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody who joined me, S-Man and Loudmouth and Conundrum. I'm sorry I was kind of all over the place. But again, I was a little bit distracted by this, and also people I was like, I was not expecting that point. So there was a bit of people throwing kind of monkey wrenches, like, ooh, that's I even when I was planning out what I was going to talk about. That didn't even occur to me. So, there's a whole... Like, I didn't even expect to be talking about the office politics and thing, and yet we ended up spending an hour on that. So thank you, everybody who joined me. You guys helped me make this content better, and although it's way longer than they should be, these 3-hour streams. All right. Yep. Thanks for joining me, everybody, and I will see you next Tuesday.
Okay.
See, maybe I should stop doing these on Tuesdays, because then I got to say see you next Tuesday, and that's just terrible. All right, bye, everybody.
I'm glad I brought some nuance to you.